This full build video has been brought to you by Squarespace. When it comes to hot hatches, there's only one car which can be considered the original, the trendsetter, and the benchmark for all others to follow. And we all know that that car is the Volkswagen Golf. The Golf GTI was released in 1976 and has been through various facelifts and model changes and is still for sale today. But about 10 years ago, the R model came in, which since then has been ruling the streets. But the newest addition to the range is the MK8 Golf R, and with these being such a new and sought after car, there was no way I was going to be able to afford one. So that really does raise the question, how am I currently sat on my own MK8 Golf R? Well, two things happened within the last 2 weeks which enabled me to be able to buy this car. Firstly, we had to say bye to one of the cars on the channel, the BMW 135i. And the second thing is a perfectly timed eBay advert, this one just here actually. Now maybe you can see why now that this car is the cheapest in the UK and quite potentially the cheapest one that's ever been for sale, but it still was quite a lot more than what I wanted to spend on the next project. We'll come back to exactly what I paid for this car later in the video, but we've got to be super careful on this build to make sure it doesn't go well over budget. The same as when you're designing a website, because if you want to elevate your business or your brand in this day and age, you cannot do that unless you're online. And Squarespace is the all-in-one tool to help you do that. From SEO to e-commerce, online marketing tools and analytics, they've got you covered. Using Squarespace's easy-to-use templates, you can simply and effortlessly design yourself a state-of-the-art website that's going to set you leagues apart from your competition. And even better than that, Squarespace even has the tools to help you improve it too, because they have loads of analytics and SEO tools to help you get the most out of your website and get found as well. And on top of that, they've got brilliant e-commerce tools, so you can even start selling products on your brand new website too. So when you go to build your website, go to Squarespace using the link in the description and discount code CHRISSLICKS to save yourself 10% off your first website or domain name. Now, I don't know the exact story with this car, but what I do know is that it ain't looking too good. It looks to me like it's gone into the back of a lorry or something like that, because there isn't much damage low down on the bumper. The grill's relatively intact. The bumper's not too bad, although it's got, well, it's definitely not going back on the car once it comes off, let's put it that way. But the grill itself is destroyed. The headlights aren't good, and the bonnet has, well, it's pretty much been folded in half. I know what you've seen already looks bad, but that is just the start.
If you listen carefully, it sounds just like a Golf.
Because all of that damage on the front is quite bad, it doesn't look horrendous to me, but it's obviously hit the car just right to trigger the crash sensors and set off the airbags. So it's not just the steering wheel airbag that we've got to replace, the dash airbag has also gone, which makes this a huge job because it's going to need a whole new dashboard in order to fix that. But no, it doesn't stop there. Not only is the driver's seatbelt locked out, the passenger seatbelt is locked out too, and also the two in the back. So although the interior, which I do love by the way, is quite nice and clean, it basically needs fully dismantling and rebuilding to fix all of those problems. So you'd think that'd be it? No, there's more. So very quickly, once we open the bonnet, we can see this damage on the front end is much more than skin deep, because there is a lot of stuff here which has seen better days. So first thing is the crash bar just here. You can see where exactly the pinpointed damage was, as it's creased there and there quite heavily, so that lines up with the main damage on the bumper too. And then that damage has gone through as well onto the rad pack, poking a hole in it there, causing some damage, bending all the radiators, intercoolers, aircon, all that stuff. And then that's going to have caused all the coolant to leak out, which is why we have no coolant in here either. Like I said earlier, these headlights have had it. This one isn't so bad, but one of the mounting points is done for, so that'll need replacing as well. These tin sections across the top, that one's bent, that one's bent too actually, and also that's pushed into the washer fluid bottle, putting a hole in that, which needs replacing now. We are completely missing the grille section here, which normally wouldn't be a problem, but this is the radar sensor out of it, I believe, and then you've got the plug here, and what should be a plug just here for the light bar, which runs between the two lights as well. So I need to try and source source a plug for that, or try and repair it or do something with it. And that's most of the stuff which I can see before I've even put a spanner on the car, so God knows what else I'm going to find when I start dismantling it. Oh, and also the engine cover's missing, which I think on these is pretty normal to remove the standard engine cover because I think it causes problems somewhere. Not 100% sure, but I think there is an aftermarket option for that anyway. And also we've got damage on the wing here, and it's also slightly dented in here as well. And on the other wing there's some kind of minor scrapes and dents. You can just catch them, so we may or may not end up replacing that as well. So that's all of the bad stuff that I've covered on the, well, that's all of the stuff which is damaged on the car, should I say, because there's still some more bits on this car which I'm not 100% a fan of, and I'm sure some of you at home will agree. And the first of those things being the wheels. These are 18-inch wheels, which it just looks so small on this car. I don't know why. So I think that it's only right that we look at upgrading those in the future, because although they're in reasonable condition, I think we can do a bit better. And I don't want to seem like I'm too negative about this, but there is a couple of bits, like I said, which I want to improve, and one of those being around the back of the car. Why does the Golf GTI, which I'm going to put on screen right now, look more aggressive than the R? The R is almost super sleeper apart from the R badge and the quad exhaust tips, because it's not got a spoiler, it's not got a particularly aggressive diffuser. It's quite bland, which seems weird because this is the faster of the two cars. This is kind of the flagship Golf. So why does it look a little bit dull? But I'm actually not mad about that at all, because it gives me the option to make it my own and do something with it. And the way I'm seeing it right now is the perfect blank canvas. But you will be glad to hear there is some bits I really, really like about this car. The first thing being the brakes. I think they just look super smart. The discs are big, they look like performance brakes, and I'm hoping they're going to work pretty well too. Next thing being the colour. We all know that for some reason I'm a sucker for a blue car, and I have no idea why. It's purely accidental. This one, I think it's called Lapis Blue, is stunning. It's the right colour for this car. Now finally, the bit which I've mentioned earlier, which I do like, is the interior. I think there was some reviews saying that these kind of touch sensitive buttons are not the most user friendly, but I can forgive it. It looks super clean in here. Everything's very, very nice and neat and modern. I'd imagine it's gonna have all the mod cons as well. The seats are lovely, and it's even got some fake carbon fibre to set it all off. But yeah, lots of nice subtle blue trims, lights, and piping, stitching, effects in the seat, which just tie it all together beautifully. Now we could keep talking about this car for ages and long out this video, but I don't see the point in that. Let's get this car inside and get on with it. But if you have made it this far into this video, chances are you've invested in the MK8 Golf R project, so make sure you go down there and smash on that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the future videos. And I just realised I haven't even shown you guys yet, but this car does start, but it does have a lot of warning lights going on. But it's really important we don't leave it running for long, because it's got no coolant in it, so that could cause serious engine damage. So I suppose we'll start from the inside and work our way out. Now, although VW on this car have deprived us with a gas strut of the bonnet, one thing they haven't deprived us of is a dipstick for the oil, like a lot of other manufacturers have in this day and age. So using the dipstick, I can check the oil level, because the last thing we want is to be running this car with low or no oil. And as I say, it is quite refreshing to be able to do this with a mechanical dipstick rather than using a computer inside the car. And as we can see, it does actually show that my car is a little bit low on oil, but it is just in spec. Now, I did do that obviously before driving the car, but I wanted to make sure, even though we've got no coolant in, that the oil is still looking good. And it is on the lower side of the tolerances, so I'll definitely want to keep an eye on that. Keep an eye underneath the car to make sure there's no leaks, and get it serviced ASAP. Now, without a ramp or getting the car jacked up, there's not a lot which we can see from here which is going to cause a problem, and it does seem to be running okay. But there is a way which we can delve inside the car and see what the computers are telling us is wrong. And we can do that with an OBD reader. And the guys at X-Tool have sent me out this one, which is going to give me a much higher level of diagnostics than the kind of OBD ports, dongles that you use with your phone. These can be used for diagnostics, for live data reading, and for resetting all sorts of service intervals and things like that. And it's definitely going to be super helpful on this build. But in this case, we're just going to be checking for live codes that are stored on the ECU to see what's actually wrong with it at the moment. And you can see here we've got a lot of codes stored from engine electrics, transmission electrics, brake electrics. So we've just scanned through 47 modules, and most of them are coming up as failures. So we've got like light control right, light control left, the interface for the start-stop, front sensor for driver's assistant, parking aid, emergency call module, passenger door electrics. Like, there is so many. Power steering, driver's door electrics, steering column lock, brake boost, airbag. We have got a lot of work to do on this car. And it is quite worrying that it's brought up all these faults, but that's one of the things with modern cars. They've got so many computers in them that, you know, sneezing next to the car can flag a code. So what I'm going to do in this case is clear all of the codes and get a fresh reading so I can see what the car is trying to tell me right now in this moment. And we've gone from having 42 codes to having 5, so that's definitely a lot better. So what we've got is the right light, parking aid, which is going to be the parking sensors, I'd imagine, the instrument cluster, which I have no idea on, the electronic central electric, no idea what that is, and the climate control module. So although that's still not great, it's definitely better than what it was just off clearing those codes. So it gives us a list then of things to work through to try and get this car back into tip-top shape. But unfortunately, I don't have anything to fix any of those things right now, so that's gonna have to wait for another time. But one thing I'm hoping I can fix right now is this noise. Because from where the front end impact has happened, it's pushed the wing back ever so slightly and bent it in slightly there, causing the door just to rub on it when it's opening, which is actually damaging the door at the moment, which is going to be no good, because apart from that, this door was actually fine. So yeah, it's a big shame about that. So just as a temporary measure, I'm going to try cracking off some of these bolts and pulling the wing forward just to make sure that I don't damage that door any more than it already is. Well, that's much better. It's a shame about the damage that's already on the door, but it is what it is. So at this very moment in time, I'm not too phased about getting like the wings off, because they're not really hiding anything, I don't think. The main thing I need to get off really is the bumper, because then that's going to reveal the rest of the damage here that I need to repair and show me the parts I need to order. And let's be honest, I don't look like there's much holding it on. Now, there's not much information on YouTube about the Mark 8 Golf, especially in rebuilding it, so I want to make sure I get this right. First thing to do is take the two T20s out of the wheel arch liners on both sides, but one of mine had been replaced with cable tie, and then there's around 10 to remove from the under tray. And yes, don't worry, I did use an axle stand. Presuming your car's not damaged, you're probably going to have to remove the grille first as well, and also I'd imagine there'd probably be a bolt in each side of the bumper too. But once all of the T20s are out, there's just a few bits for me to remove, like the cable tie, which is holding the loom to the bumper, and providing you haven't missed or forgot any bolts, it should come straight off. And then there's just one big connector which connects the bumper loom to the rest of the car. So now I've got the bumper off the car, we can see the full extent of the damage on the crash bar itself. And this looks quite bad here, but I'm actually really impressed with the condition of it. The arch liners are both perfectly usable, that one there. This one here has a, the most minor little bit of damage here. I can plastic weld that from the back, and that should be absolutely fine, not a problem at all. Now obviously I know the AC rad, the radiator and the intercooler have had it, so they are going to need replacing. But even this kind of lower bumper support crash bar thing is absolutely fine. Even the foam section which supports the front bumper, although a little bit damaged, again I could put a bit of glue behind there and that would work absolutely fine. Also, it's still in one solid piece. I may still end up replacing it, I'll see how I feel. So the great news is too, the chassis legs are looking perfect. So this section here and also the same round here are looking good to go. So yes, although this does look bad, I'm actually pretty impressed with how it is once I've took that bumper off. But I don't want to jinx it too early because it could still turn around and bite me. So I know that I've already claimed that this is the cheapest one that was for sale in the UK, and at the time it definitely was, but I've never seen one go for cheaper than what I paid for this. And I promised you guys earlier in the video that I'd tell you exactly what I paid for this car. So here it is. I paid £25,700. But hear me out on this number, because this may seem like quite a lot, but there is something within the deal for this car which really sweetened it. Now, is that a lot of money for this sort of car? It's hard to say really, I don't know, because there isn't any others to compare it to. But it's a 2021 model, which means it's 2 years old, and that means that the car is still in warranty. I'm not sure whether that warranty would still be valid though. It has a total of 22,641 miles, which I think is about right for a 2-year-old car. 10,000 miles a year, that's perfectly normal. Now, I am aware that spec makes a bit of a difference on the cost of these as well, and I may be wrong, but I believe these are actually the standard spec wheels. I think you can get like an inch bigger or a different style or something, which is a nicer option. And my one doesn't have the sunroof, which although it doesn't bother me, probably does make a little bit of a difference on the price. So now we need to get the rest of the front end off. That means taking out the headlights, Now, some of you in the last video said that this headlight looks like it is repairable, but it has damaged brackets on the top, the side, and also has a gaping hole in the bottom. So although it would have been nice to repair that, it doesn't look like that's an option anymore. So now we've discovered that this build is already getting more expensive than we'd already hoped, we can carry on stripping away that front end. So now the headlights are very quickly stripped off and the top sections of the slam panel are too. We can see what we've got to work with. We can see that this crash bar is severely damaged and so is the rad pack, and they both need to be changed. Now I've had to improvise slightly on my bonnet stay because that actually attaches on one of the pieces which was bent and I've had to remove. And the ideal thing to do at this moment would be take the bonnet off, but it's a bit more than a one-man job. So the first thing I want to get off is the crash bar. We've got a bolt in each corner of that and then maybe one just here too, and that should come off from the car. So 4 16mm on each side separates the rad pack and the crash bar away from the car itself. Because of the way that this has been damaged, I decided to separate the rad pack from the crash bar too, so I could remove everything in pieces because it just seemed like the easier way. So 4 T30s, 2 in each side, hold those together, and once those are out, the crash bar itself can come off the car, and then we can start disconnecting some of the hoses to the radiator, the intercooler and the AC rad. So now we've got that stripped back, I keep finding more broken parts and I feel like this might catch me out. So bits that are broken, I've got the nipple off the top of the radiator pipe which is broken. The airbox as well is broken. And we've also got this charge pipe here which comes from the intercooler towards the turbo, which has well and truly had it. But we can't get much further now without more parts, so I need to take a little trip. So I've just been to Bradford and picked up a complete Golf GTI rad pack. I'm hoping this is the same. I can't see why it wouldn't be. I've compared it and everything looks right, but yeah, there may be some minor differences. One of those quite potentially could be the intercooler. I may or may be wrong with that, but just in case I am wrong, while I'm up north and over this way, I thought it'd be worth taking a visit to Awesome GTI, and these guys have sorted me out with some extra bits. First of which being an AirTech intercooler for the Mark 8 Golf, and we also have a bunch of parts from Racing Line which are really going to improve the engine bay of the Golf R. By the way, if you're interested in any of these bits, I'm going to leave a link for Awesome GTI in the description. So we've got our new rad pack from Bradford, we'll call it the Brad pack. Right, bad news. So I've just noticed on this pipe here we've got some damage where I don't think it's gone all the way through, but it's not looking good. So it's got a slash in it here and a split just there. So I've already ordered this bit to replace, but I haven't ordered this. Now I've just tried to ring TPS and VW and it's on back order for up to 2 weeks, I think. So that's really going to slow things down, which isn't ideal. But let's not let a little bit of damaged pipe dampen our spirits, and we can still crack on and come back to that at a later date. So now I'm going to strip back the new rad pack because there's something in here which I want to change. So off comes the plastic shrouding, and then that can closely be followed by the AC rad too. So we've now got the rad pack fully stripped back to the intercooler, and I'm sure we all know what's coming here. We have an AirTech one that has been supplied to us by the guys at Awesome GTI. So we need to fit that into the new rad pack before that can go on the car. So then we've got to release the factory intercooler from the radiator, which is held on by a few clips. And once that's off, we can then turn our attention to the new AirTech intercooler. The reason why you want an uprated intercooler is because it means that your charge air is going to be colder, colder air is denser, and denser air means a bigger bang, which means more power. So once we've got that unpackaged, we can then fasten that to the radiator, and then attach the AC rad to the intercooler. Now this originally just kind of clips into place onto the standard intercooler, but on this it uses some little metal brackets and screws into place, so it's probably going to be more secure than factory. Then it's back on with the plastic shrouding, and then lastly we can fit up the crash bar too. Our new intercooler also came with some new silicone pipes, so I changed out the old looking rubber ones which were on the car for those nice new shiny silicone ones. So So the rad pack is now back in one piece with that new AirTech intercooler from the guys at Awesome GTI, and obviously we're using the Golf GTI, well, everything else. So I'm hoping that all of that's going to fit no problems, but before we go to fit that up, we've got the broken parts to change, like this boost pipe here, and we had that coolant pipe over the top, so we're going to get those changed and then get that on. I'm hoping the other part, which is on back order, we're going to be able to fit while the rad pack's still on. If not, it'll be a bit of a ball ache, so I'll take it all off again when it eventually does arrive to then fit it. That'll be a bit long. So then we can take off our broken, nasty looking charge pipe and replace it with our nice brand new one. Now, I am aware that you can get an uprated version of these, but I just didn't have time to get one. My local parts place had this in stock for the next day. So then it was just to prepare everything ready for the new rad pack and crash bar. So then we had to tuck all the wires exactly where we wanted them and all the hoses too, and then we can push that up into place. We just put in a couple of bolts for the crash bar, only finger tight, just to hold everything loosely in place. Just while we got all of the radiator hoses, the intercooler hoses and the AC hoses all plumbed up. Once we're happy with that, we can then start connecting all of the electrical connectors back together. And we also have these sections here which kind of connect the slam panel to the rest of the car. Now these were really badly damaged in the crash, but luckily I got a set with the car and also got a set included with the rad pack too. Once we're happy with where everything was sitting, we could then finally tighten up those big bolts which hold the crash bar to the car itself. And then I can connect up that new radiator kind of T-piece section which was broken in the accident for that new one which I got from TPS. And then finally it's on with the horns with one bolt and an electrical connector on the back. And I think we can all agree with that new rad pack on and all of the other bits replaced, it's definitely looking a lot better than it was. It looks like a more complete car. But you can tell it's been sat with the bonnet open for ages because the engine bay itself is absolutely hanging. So we've got to do something about that and get it cleaned up. Now it's important here, we don't want to get any chunks or dirt in the wrong places, so we make sure to plug up the intake for the turbo, and then we can just give everything a blast over with the airline to take out any loose bits and blow out any debris from where we don't want it. And then we can take the car outside and give it a good go over with a degreaser and a collection of brushes to get rid of all of that dirt that's built up the whole time this car's been sat. Now some of you are probably going to cry about this next bit, but then we just rinse off what's left with a pressure washer, being careful obviously where we direct it, but I've done this for years and never had a problem. Now also with some of the parts of the car being disconnected, we did also go over any plugs or anywhere that we didn't want water with an airline just to make sure it was properly dry. And now the engine bay is looking night and day different. We can get the car back inside because we've got some more work to do to it. So how much better does that look now? I know there's a few pipes we need to change, but we're going to have to do those at a later date when they come back from being on back order. We found an extra one here. Yeah, is this one that needs changing because there's a slight kink in the metal. It'll probably hold fine, but we want it to be right. And with the new rad pack fitted and all of the engine bay tidied up and all the broken bits out, it's already looking like a different car, but I think we can take this one step further. And we're going to do that with a little bit of help from the guys at Racing Line, because they're going to be helping us take this Golf R from being okay to being something special. Not only just in looks, but also in performance too, and that's why we're starting in the engine bay. So all of these parts here are either going to help us improve the look of the engine bay or the performance of the engine itself. And honestly, it's so sick that we can get companies like this to work with us now, and I've got to thank you guys at home for watching, and even more so if you're subscribed. So let's start fitting some of these Racing Line bits. The first thing we've got to put on is a billet oil filter housing. And yes, don't worry, I will be changing the filter at a later date when I service the car properly. Although this won't give any performance gain, it's definitely a more durable and better looking item than the original. Then we also got a new coolant cap as well. Again, another black billet one. And I think you're starting to get the idea. They've got a load of dress-up parts for the engine bay, included also a new brake fluid reservoir cap. And I'm sure you can imagine they're all super easy to fit. It's just pop the old one off and on with the new one. It takes probably 2 minutes to do all of these bits. and I think we can all agree they definitely look a lot better than the factory ones. I'm sure some of you have spotted that the oil filter housing isn't pointing in the right direction. Don't worry, again, I'm going to correct it when I service the car. And then we have one final big piece, really. This is Racing Line's piece de résistance, and you can tell already that it's a much better quality than my French accent is. This is Racing Line's R600 intake kit, and although not the most showy intake kit on the market, this is widely known as one of the best ones in terms of performance. I think mainly due to the fact of it using the full width of the intake grille on the front to then get as much cold air in as possible. But anyway, to fit this, we change over the turbo elbow for this slightly larger one. Then it was on with the intake hose. This just goes from the turbo elbow over to the airbox. And we've also got to hook up this little breather pipe. To do that, we fit this adapter which came with the kit, and then it just push fits into the silicone pipe and then tightens in with a Jubilee. And then probably the most visual part of this kit, the airbox itself. So as I said earlier, this uses the full width of the grille across the front in order to force as much air as possible into that intake. So the main part of this fits onto the factory mounting points for the airbox, and then the other parts into the slam panel. And I was quite lucky, to be fair, because there was one part of the kind of intake for the original airbox which I needed to replace, which I didn't have, and this airbox replaces that. So once that bottom half of the airbox is in place, we can then start fitting up the new foam air filter. And then once we're happy with that and the Jubilee is tightened down, we can then fit the top section of the airbox just using the supplied screws. Now, although this is an enclosed system, which means that you won't be able to hear the turbo noise quite as much, it will definitely be better for performance because it's not got the hot air from the engine bay entering into the intake. And generally I think it's quite a smart looking kit. But anyway, once all of these are fastened down, and I only managed to drop one, which we did manage to save, but that is the new R600 intake fitted to the Mark 8 Golf R. And it may or may not have needed a quick wipe down just to get all my dirty fingerprints off it. Like I said in the last video, there was a little sweetener on this deal which made that £25,700 price tag a little less of a sting. So when I bought the car, it also came with a few parts. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know what the last guy was thinking because a lot of this I haven't needed. Like, these two steel parts came with the new rad pack. We've got a bumper bracket which is included, which I am gonna need. And then the rest of these pipes are all aircon pipes. I've checked them all over and I can't see any damage on the aircon pipes at all. I think he mistakenly ordered the aircon ones when he needed the radiator ones. We also got a new bonnet stay, just a couple of little bits which made that deal a little bit sweetener, but that's not all. Because the total value of all those bits is probably a couple of £100. That wouldn't be much of a bonus. But this next bit really is. I nearly got a complete front end for a Mark 8 Golf R included with the sale of the actual car itself. So that means I got two of the IQ headlights with the blue trim like you get in the R, a complete front bumper, a pair of wings, a bonnet, and I almost forgot, I also got the grille too with the little centre bar light in there as well. Now that doesn't mean there's going to be no work to do on the front end because we're going to have to repair this headlight. It's got a broken mounting point here and here, but I'm judging by the holes that you can see here, you can get a headlight repair kit. At least that's what I hope anyway. Which I don't know about you guys, but I think that definitely makes the £25,700 not seem so bad. Not just because of the cost of these items, but also the hassle of sourcing them. Now it is a shame they're not in the right colour. These ones are all black, where my car obviously is blue. We needed a bit of paintwork on the door anyway, and also the underside of the bonnet we haven't got to paint because on that one, the underside of the bonnet isn't body coloured anyway. It's like some weird kind of glossy grey colour. So if you thought for the £25,700 I got done over in the first place, let me know in the comment section if that has changed your mind. But anyway, back to the point, I could not be happier with the transformation on this engine bay. So we've got 2 or 3 parts which we're waiting for, which are on back order before we can fill it up with coolant and really run the car up to temperature, but it just looks like a different car. And if that transformation isn't worth a subscribe, I don't know what is. So I guess we should crack on now, and I guess the question is now, do we do the front end next? Or do we try and tackle this blown airbag in the dashboard and sort out the entire interior? Interiors are my biggest weakness and I'm really not looking forward to doing this job. And that job is sorting out the interior on my crashed Mark 8 Golf R, because when this car was involved in the collision, it triggered the crash sensors and set off the steering wheel airbags, the dashboard airbags, and all of the tensioners in the seat belts. So that means we're going to have to replace all of these items, including the complete dashboard too. And then at the end of all of that, we've still got to try and get off the airbag light. So we'll start disassembly by unclipping the steering wheel airbag from the steering wheel itself, but as the first hurdle, this took longer than I wanted to because I was being super careful. So there's a few reasons why I'm so nervous about working on this dashboard. Firstly, it's a massive job, and I've got to try and make sure everything goes back in the same place, in the same order, with the right wires going to it, and it's all plugged in correctly, because otherwise I've got to take it all apart again. And secondly is all of these screens and kind of touchscreen buttons, I'm sure are going to be super expensive, so if I do damage any of those, it could really screw over my budget, which really is the last thing that we want. So once the airbag's out of the way, we can loosen the steering wheel off, and then give it a whack to make sure that I don't hit myself in the face when I'm pulling it off the car. And now we've got that out of the way, we've got much better access to the trims and panels around it. I wanted to be careful with the clock spring, so I taped that into place to make sure I don't knock it, because if you spin it too many times in the wrong direction, you've got to replace it. So my plan of action was quite simple. Take off what I can see, which removes just with clips, and remove the screws as I'm going. I sectioned out screws from the right hand side, the left hand side, and the centre into 3 separate containers. And that's because I knew this wasn't going to be a simple job, and I wanted to make sure all of the bolts went back in all the right places. I did find myself getting stuck at some point, so what I did in that situation is I swapped my attention to the other side of the car and started there, just to give myself a little break and a little refresh before I went back to the bit that I was stuck on. Stripping out the passenger side was a little bit easier. We had to take out the heater vents and the trims for the centre, and then that revealed all of the bolts for the glove box. Progress is looking pretty good, but I found something on the glove box which I want to show you quick. Is this cut here not like a bit sketchy for factory VW? And the fact it's got all these plastic filings in it. I'm just trying to figure out why that'd be there. Who knows, maybe one of the many previous owners has modified this car and fitted something in the glove box which now isn't there. The next thing to come out was something that looked like a CD multi-changer, but I'm sure it wasn't. I'm 90% sure it was something to do with the radio, so this just unbolted from the bolts behind the glove box, and there's a couple of clips at the back, and then you've got to unplug it, and that comes out too. So now we've got most of the stuff out of the passenger side. I went back to the driver's side to try and remove some of the bits that I was scared of breaking. Firstly being this trim and fascia around both the screens. This part was really thin and flimsy and only held in with clips, so if you pulled this in the wrong direction, I'm sure it would just snap in half. After I'd removed all the bolts from the underside, this trim here really didn't want to come off. I think it was tucked behind the centre console, so we're going to have to take that out in a minute to be able to get this out too. The screen which displays all of the car info was really easy to remove. There was just 2 clips holding it in and then a plug on the back. And then behind all of this, it revealed more screws, so I've took those out, and now I can take out the centre screen, which was held in with 4 more screws. Now I've stripped back about as much as I can from the face of the dashboard. Now what I've got to do is get this centre console out, but before I can do that, it's the seats out first. Now I've had my suspicions the whole time that I have been in this car, but I think this just confirms whoever was driving this may or may not have been inhaling something green which may have caused the crash. But on a positive note, I found 20p, so now the whole car cost me £25,699.80. But anyway, let's crack on with removing this centre console. We've got the trim out at the back, which revealed a couple more screws to take out, along with also the trim at the front, which holds the USB-C charging ports, and then there's a couple of screws behind there as well. And once these were out, it did feel like halfway there. It felt loose, it felt like it wanted to come out, but there was something underneath the centre console holding it back. Right, I'm officially stuck. So this is where we're up to. We've got all the glove box stripped out, all the screens stripped out, all the trims on the dash stripped out, the back of the centre console stripped out, both of the seats out, and I'm just stuck trying to get this centre trim and centre console out, because it's almost like there's a fastening for this behind here, but I can't get that off without taking this off. So I'm definitely missing something. I've just got to find where it is. This is the first rebuild of a Mark 8 Golf R that I can find on YouTube, so I'm just going to have to wing it. I know for a fact there's something underneath this area of the centre console holding it back, but these clips felt so tight, it was almost like it didn't even want to come out at all. So I gently pried up pieces until I finally found a piece which wanted to come away easily, and that was this centre bit, and then that gave me the leverage to get the next bit out. Yes! And once that was out and unplugged, it then revealed 2 more screws tucked inside that part of the centre console which I could get out, and then finally the centre console was loose. I'm so glad I got that out. I was trying for ages, but one thing I will say is whoever's had this car before definitely hasn't looked after it. I mean, that is a bit minging, isn't it? Especially with all the stuff down the side of the seats that we found earlier. Yeah, it's not nice. And then it was just to find the last bolts hiding in places, and also taking out the A-pillar trims, which honestly, you're not going to believe how awkward this was. Normally, there'd just be a bolt tucked behind a trim and a bunch of clips, or just clips on their own. But on these, there's a style of clip which I've never seen before on a car, and it was the most awkward thing I've ever had to take off. For something that should be a 2-minute job max, I ended up spending about 20 minutes trying to get these clips off, which I'll show you in a second how they work. I've got to say, absolutely hats off to Volkswagen for making the worst design clip I've ever seen. So these two are just normal clips, they just pull out, no problems. This top one here, you have to somehow, by only half popping it out, so you only get about less than an inch of room to play with, you've then somehow got to get behind it, pull this square one out that my finger's on now, and then slide that one out that way before you can actually take it off. Trust me, it's a nightmare. So once I was over crying about that, it was time to remove the centre speaker, and we all remember what happened last time on the F-Type SVR where Liam broke the windscreen doing these screws up, so I wanted to make sure I was very careful when undoing them. Right, as far as I can see, that right there may well be the last bolt. She feels pretty loose. We're just gonna have to give it a wiggle and see what happens. My fingers are crossed, I'm praying. I can't see any of the bolts which I'll need to take out anywhere, but I'm sure there's something. So now all the bolts are out, as far as I can tell anyway, and all of the wires are now getting in the way. So I've got to tuck those through where they need to go so I can actually get the dash out of the car. Now I've got to admit I was completely wrong. That definitely wasn't the last screw to take out. There was about 6 or 7 more, but once those were out, I could then start pulling the dash away from the car. But I did think I might get away with not taking the clock spring off. Again, I was completely wrong. I had to take that off, but it was only a 2-second job. But as you can see now, we're getting super close to getting this dashboard out and finally getting the new one in, ready to get this interior back into one piece. And finally, after hours and hours of work, we eventually got there. Yeah, boy! And you can see the mess of spaghetti which it leaves behind. This, looking at it like this, is mind-boggling. It's just complete chaos. Well, that was some serious graft. Now, we've got everything out of the car. I want to try and do this while it's still fresh in my brain so I can remember where everything goes. And hopefully it doesn't cause us too many problems from here. Well, we're about to find out. So there is old dashboard, and here is the new one. Now, everything on here is as I need it to be, apart from one bit a little bit annoyingly, and that is this kind of vent section up here. So you can see I've not got it on there, but it's just here on this one. Now this is actually kind of like plastic riveted in, so I need to drill out these rivets, and I just don't know why they've took it out of this one, but it's annoying, it is what it is. So I've got to try and save it out of this one, transfer it over to that one, and we should be good to go. So it was in with the new dashboard, but there is no way of me telling after I put all of this back in until right at the very end whether we've achieved our goal of getting that airbag light off the dashboard. So now we're getting the dash back in position and feeding the wires to the right location on the dash to make sure that we're going to be able to plug them in. And slowly we can start putting it all back together. So that means putting the clock spring back on, putting all of those screws back in, and making sure everything goes back in the right order. And that probably is the most complicated part of the reassembly, because you can't remember exactly what order things came out, what bolt came out of where, and what piece went in what order, so you'll always end up taking a few bits out to put them back together in the right way. But I've got to be straight, this bit was much more enjoyable because you know roughly where everything came from and how to get it back in, and typically it's much easier to put things in than take them out, especially when they're on clips. So next thing to go in was the glove box. And then that can be followed up by the center console. And then once that was back in, we could start fitting up some of the shifter trims and some of the other bits around the center console too. Naturally, I'm going to make things look a little bit easier when I'm editing it, so I do want to make it clear I didn't get this right first time. There was some stuff I had to take out to plug something else in, or to put another screw in somewhere, so, you know, it definitely was a little bit harder than it looks. So here is where we're up to. We've got the center console back in with all the trimmings. We've got most of the dash back in with most of the trims. We haven't got the steering wheel in yet, but I've just removed the back seat to gain access to the rear seat belt, and that's because all of the seat belts in this car are locked out, which means they're going to need replacing, which also means we may as well do something with them. And to do that, we've brought the belts down to Vibe Belts in Birmingham, and I'm a little bit spoiled for choice on what colours to go for. Now obviously my interior is all blue, the exterior is blue, so blues kind of make sense, but there's still a few choices. We've got this sort here with kind of a medium blue edge and like a carbon style centre on it, which looks quite cool, but I think the shade of that is just a little bit too off to the colour of the seat itself. So I think we're going to go for this kind of royal blue colour. So I got new seat belts included with the dashboard, and I wanted to do something to liven up the interior a bit while I'm working on it. So why would I not take the seat belts quickly down to Vibe Belts in Birmingham and get them trimmed to suit the interior just that little bit better. Now if you're wanting to get this done to your car, Callum offers a drive-in, drive-out service where he removes the belts from your car, puts the new ones in and then refits them to the car itself. Or you can post your seat belts to him and he can do them, send them back and you can refit them. Either way, his work is always 10 out of 10. So if you want to get your belts done, I'll leave his links in the description, go check him out. But now those are done, we can get back to Leicester and get those fitted in the car. But quickly before we do that, I want to do a bit of cleanup. But the interior is now hoovered and looking better, but it still isn't looking perfect, so I think we can go a bit further with this. Now because I can smell and see that the car has been smoked in, I'm going to be using this blaster to not only blast out the remnants of all the bits and bobs that are down there, but also to freshen up the interior too. Because what I can do with this is put a cleaning solution inside it, and then it not only cleans it with compressed air, but also blasts the cleaning solution into the fabrics too. And now that that's done, we can get back into the interior and start fitting up the new belts before the seats go back in. So I dismantle all of the trims around the B pillar and the C pillar, which is going to give me access to the seat belts so I can unbolt those from the car and then bolt in these lovely new blue ones. So now the new belts are bolted and plugged in, we should hopefully not have a warning for those on the dash anymore. And I don't know about you guys, but I think this colour is perfect for this colour of car. Not only on the interior, but also the exterior too. It just ties in perfectly. So now the interior is all cleaned up and it doesn't smell like Snoop Dogg's been chonging a fat one in there. We can start getting the seats back in. Firstly, it's back in with the rear seat. Not forgetting to bolt in the centre seat belt as well. And then it's in with the bottom of the rear seat too, which has a little pressure sensor in it to tell you whether the rear passengers have their seatbelt on or not, so you've got to remember to plug that in. And then it's back in with the front seats too before I start putting together the trims around the steering wheel. And with these back in, it really is starting to come together now and starting to look a whole lot more complete. We really are cooking with gas now, and we are nearly there. So we've got the seats in, the new seat belts in from Vibe Belts. We've got most of the dash back in with just the trims around the steering wheel to go. Now I haven't powered the car up yet because I still haven't got the steering wheel and steering wheel airbag on, but I'm praying when I do I can clear the airbag fault and we have no fault codes for the airbags left at least. Because if it turns out I've not plugged something in or, you know, not done something right, all of this could have to come back out again. So now it's back on with the steering column trim. And then finally back on with the steering wheel too, making sure to line it up with the splines correctly. And we're just about there. I'm just going to tighten up the centre nut on the steering wheel, which I'm now just going to make sure is tight with a breaker bar. Talk to spec. And then the very final piece, the steering wheel airbag. Okay, before I fire it up, I'm going to plug back in the radar because I know that can flag an airbag light. So let's get that in. And we can finally get the battery back on and connected. 1, 2. Now, if you're wondering how many bolts I've got left over, I've got one little kind of self-tapper style screw and one clip. I don't think that's bad going. I was hunting for the life of me where that last screw went, but I just could not find it. I think the clip is from somewhere in the back, so I could actually get that in. You can't understand how much hard work has gone into making this interior back to where it is now, and it feels lovely in here, it feels gorgeous, but there is one key thing that we need to do to see whether all of that hard work has been worth it. So if you are enjoying these sorts of videos, please consider subscribing to the channel down the bottom. It's free to do so and helps me out a bunch. But now it's time to see if all of this hard work's paid off and see if that airbag light has cleared. What have we got, what have we got, what have we got? Okay, there's the airbag light down there. Please go off, please go off, please go off, please go off, please go off. Okay, I know there's a lot of warnings. I haven't seen one for airbag yet. Please, please, please. No! After all of that, we've still got an airbag error. Shut up! It's still there. I've started it, and we've still got the airbag warning light down here. I can't believe it. I'm so sad. Okay, one last thing to try. I've got the X-Tool reader, so I'm just going to scan the car now. I know it's going to have 1,000,001 warning lights because there's, well, 1,000,001 warning lights on the dash. Let's go for a full system diagnosis. See if there's an airbag one. Read trouble code. Okay, let's go for it. Clear trouble codes. The fault codes have been cleared. Read trouble codes. Okay. So we've got two that have come back. We've got front passenger airbag igniter, short circuit to ground. So that means the dashboard airbag. That's not good. Okay, here is what we've found. Hopefully you guys can see this. This is the live data for the front passenger airbag igniter, which is the one in the dash. Luckily, I haven't had to take it all back out again to be able to get to it, because you can just reach it from underneath. Obviously, we're not going to change the full dashboard this time. Now, when we unplug it, if you can just unplug it for his deck, here's what it says. It says value's too large. That's fine, not a problem, as you'd expect. And then if you can just plug it back in, there we go. Oh, it said correct for a second. Then it says short circuit to ground. And I think when you hold it, it kind of... We did something a second ago, and there we go, correct, no, correct, no, no. There we go, correct, when you're holding it. Now if you let go, short circuit to ground. So it's definitely that. So I've got to try and find a way to figure out if it's the plug or the airbag itself. If it's the airbag itself, that's a big problemo. Honestly, there is no better feeling than when things go, well, badly, but then you can sort it. I've just had a tweak inside the airbag plug and gave it a little jiggle and noticed that the plug came out super easy. I then got on the earth, tweaked it the tiniest bit, and it's now secured, and it is now permanently showing as correct. Yes. Clear trouble code. The fault code has been cleared. And then we've just got development code 1 left. And that lines up perfectly with this here. That is a message I got from one of my mates, which was reading into one of the codes, and that is for the front radar system. So does that just mean, this is quite hot by the way, does that just mean that the radar needs recoding in now it's took, you know, obviously a bit of a whack? So we had 2 problems, we're down to 1. Or is it just because I'm missing so many bits off the front end? There might be like a crash sensor on the bumper or something like that, which just needs plugging in, which might clear that code. Or could it be down to something like this, because the radar is on the same loom as the lights for the front grille, and obviously my plug is damaged here. I just don't know. So for now, I've hooked up a battery charger, I've connected up the new front bumper with the new loom and the radar pointing away from the car. What I'm going to try and do is clearing all of the codes rather than just clearing the airbag ones, and I'm praying that this time it's going to work, because it'd be such a shame after all of this hard work if I still can't get that airbag light off. Here we go. Oh, I thought it went then. Come on, please, 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 please. No! I really thought I had it then. I thought I had it. Calibration is the only thing I can think it needs, and I'm so disappointed that we can't get that light off. I really am. But we have gone from 7 fault codes for all of the airbags down to 1, so we were much closer to getting that light off and being able to drive this car on the road. And sometimes in life, you've got to take the little wins. So the first thing that I've got is a new washer fluid bottle, because this one's got a hole in it. So with the old one off and the new one in place and fastened down, we can get that filled up with washer fluid and move on to the next job. And then the next repair is that we're missing the plug for the light bar on the grille. So until we can fix that, we're always going to have a headlamp warning light. Now these can be a nightmare to buy from main dealers, but luckily a company called PA Products contacted me and sent me out a massive care package with every plug I could possibly need for my Mark 8 Golf R. Now luckily I got away pretty lightly in terms of electrical damage on this car, so this little tiny thing is the only plug I should need. So I can pin the 2 wires into the plug, and then we're going to check that on the car to make sure that it works before we properly wire it in. Now the 2 wires on the car are yellow and brown. I'm going to take an educated guess and put the red to the yellow and the black to the brown, and fingers crossed that works. But let's give it a try. And although it's pretty dim, this is the side that's definitely working. You can see the light just there. And this is the side that the plug was damaged on, and my educated guess was right. And you can see that that light is working too. So now I'm satisfied with my repair. I can really set it in stone by using these heat-on electrical connectors which solder it and insulate it in one go, and also loom tape it to tie it in with the rest. So there's another quick job ticked off the list. But while we're on the subject of lights, we've got another problem to look at. Because we do have a new pair of front lights for the car, which aren't damaged on the face, but one of them has some damage to the mounting points. So you can see this one here is okay, this one here is okay, but here and here are both damaged. And we could just fit that to the car and it'd probably be okay because it's got 3 mounting points left, but I don't want that to affect the durability of the light and the rebuild, but also the panel gaps as well. So I've been to TPS and picked up a headlight repair kit. There's been loads of times I've needed one of these, but this is the first car where they actually make one for it. So the factory headlight has a couple of holes here, and so does the mounting point. So what I need to do is clean up where the damage is, and then I can screw in the new mounting points into the headlight. So using a Dremel, I take off what's left but not needed off the headlight and screw in the repair bracket. And there we go, one new mounting point looking pretty much perfect, I'd say. We've still got one more to do though. Why they don't make those for every car, I have no idea. That is wicked. So you might remember from the last video, we still had the airbag light on the dash and we read it using the X-Tool reader. This time I'm going to read it using the OBD11 reader and see if it's telling me anything different. Because it's had a bit of time to reset now and do its thing, so I mean, I'm hoping for the best. Rear safety belt tension igniter. It says resistance too low. Let's look into it. You lot aren't going to believe this. I'm such a doofus. I've just stripped back the interior panel and look at this. The plug for the seatbelt isn't even plugged in. Wow. So let's get that in. If that's all it is, well, it's a result, I suppose, but I am an idiot. Okay, back on the OBD11 app, I can clear that code. Wow. Success. I'm so happy but so annoyed at myself. Here we go. And no airbag light. Now, I have no idea if this next one's gonna work. This is my radar sensor off the front of the Golf, and you may be able to see on the top there, one of the tabs has broken off, which is gonna cause it to rattle around in its place and not do its job properly. Now, I can either replace this or try and repair it, and well, I've got nothing to lose by trying to repair it, so I may as well give it a shot. So out of what I've got left over from the car, I've made this very small piece of plastic here to roughly the same size as what's broken off the radar already, and also it matches the thickness of the other tabs. I have no idea if this is going to work, but I'm going to start by just trying to super glue this down roughly again to where the old one was, which is about there. And I don't think that looks too bad, but there's no way that that little bit of super glue is going to hold that in place on its own, considering it's going to clip behind this section of the grille here. It would help if I plug this in. I don't want to go too much here, just enough to let it seep into the plastic. You'll have to excuse my filming here, I didn't realise how zoomed in the camera was, but what I'm doing is super gluing the new tab on and then using plastic staples to hold it sturdy too, and once those are trimmed back, it looks pretty good. I don't think that's too bad. Now, I'm praying that me doing this here hasn't damaged the internals of the radar. I haven't gone deep at all, as you can see. So I'm praying, as I say, that it hasn't, but I can't see that it would have. But that now is, that's pretty solid, that is. So I'm going to try and fit this into the grille and see if my repairs worked. And there we go. That hasn't even got a mil of play in it. Now, like I said, if that has damaged the internals of the radar, it's not the end of the world, because that means that I would have had to replace it anyway, because I wouldn't have been able to fix that tab. But if it hasn't, that means we're all good, and that means that that can then be calibrated back to the car, and we should be ready to rock. So now that's repaired, we can put the grille back together. But while I've got the plastic staple gun out, I'm just going to use it to repair the arch liner too, because there was a very little split in this that definitely wasn't worth replacing, so a quick repair using that, and it's good to go. You may remember from one of the previous videos too that we had some issues with some of the coolant pipes being damaged and also the parts being on back order. Luckily, those have now shown up, so we can start swapping them over and hopefully get some coolant in the car. So while I start getting the parts ready for the next section of the video, Tom tackles taking off the last coolant pipe and replacing it with the brand new ones. Which does look stupidly fiddly now the new rad pack's on. So now we've got all of the pipes back on for the coolant, so we can finally get some in, but before we do that, we want to make sure it doesn't go to waste, so we're going to pressure test the system first. So we double check our work to make sure that the system is holding pressure and we're not going to lose coolant when we put it in. And you can see it's holding a delicious 15 psi, so that's no problems at all. We can now attach the vacuum filling attachment and put 6 litres of coolant into the engine. The way vacuum filling works is quite simple really. All it does is make a seal in the coolant system, suck all of the air out, and then pumps the coolant in to replace it, which means you're much less likely to get an airlock. And now we've got the car full of coolant. It doesn't seem to be leaking. We've got a little bit of splashage from... Oh, I say it doesn't seem to be leaking. Quite a lot back there. What could that be from earlier?
Yeah, no, that's when I took the pipe off the bottom.
Okay, that was already there. But yeah, we're holding pressure, seems good, got coolant in it, that's good. I think we should go and start it. Okay, well that seems pretty solid, so maybe we should carry on. So I guess now what we need is a front end on the car. So I was a bit undecided with what to do with this wing because it'd make blending easier to leave it in place. But I think because we've got a little bit of an awkward dent here, an awkward dent here. This is all a little bit dented, only very slightly though, but it's also scratched through the paint itself. I think we're just going to change it and then just accept that we're going to have to blend the door too. So we can start getting the wings off by taking the 10 mils out from inside the bonnet, and then we've got to get the car jacked up in the air with the wheel off and the arch liner out too to be able to access the rest of them. So off comes the wheel and the arch liner, and now we can get to all the bolts we need to in order to take those wings off. Now there was a super awkward trim on the inside of the door shut which kind of covers all of the bolts, which almost seemed impossible to get off without taking the door off. I don't know how we're going to get it back in without doing that. But now the wing is removed and we can replace it with the ones that we got included with the car. And now the wings are on, it's time to put the headlights back in and give the car its face back so we can get those shuffled into place. These were quite awkward ones to put in if I'm being honest, but we can get all 5 of those bolts in, and that is the headlights then fitted too. So there we've got both new wings on. I haven't tightened up these bolts yet because we might want to play with the panel gap just a little bit. And both of the headlights in too, and they seem pretty eager to work because both of them already have turned on exactly the same. So I'm praying, fingers crossed, that they don't need coding into the car or anything daft. But let's face it, they probably do. So now the headlights are on, we can start looking at fitting the bumper up, which should be a fairly simple job. So once we've got an idea of how it goes on, we can then fit in the foam crash bar section and then start fastening the bumper up. And now it's really starting to look like a complete car. But there's still 2 more body panels to fit. Next up is the bonnet, so we can take the old one off and swap it out for the new black one, again which we got included with the car. Luckily, the new bonnet also came with new hinges, so we can bolt it in place and just play around with the panel gaps, knowing that those hinges aren't damaged. So while Tom's putting in the washer jets on the bonnet, I'm going to fit the final piece, which is the grille. Well, I've decided I quite like a black Golf R. Obviously the blue accents definitely help. Now, we've still got some work to do on the panel gaps as you can see here, but we're going to come back to that later in the video. I've still got even more stuff to do, but for tonight, I'm calling it. So it's now the next day and, well, I've come into what is pretty much a complete car. I could go and take this out on the road now and it would be, well, perfectly road legal. It's got an MOT because it's under 3 years old, so I don't have to get that done. It's got no warning lights on the dash. So the next step, I suppose, is paint. Actually, not quite. I just remembered one thing which has really been bugging me, and I'm sure it's been bugging some of you guys too, and that is this gas bonnet strut. Now, Racing Line have sent this out to me along with all of the other bits and also some more which you're going to see in future videos, which is super exciting. But this definitely needs doing. Now, this should be a super easy install. It should be this off here and then replace it with this. Then this is the bit that I find strange because VW have already given you a place to put this end on, and then I've just attached this end here, and then I can just clip that in and take off the old one like that, and now we have a gas strut on the MK8 Golf. Yes, that's better. Nice one, Racing Line. Now, although the front end on this doesn't actually look that bad in black, it's definitely not going to stay that colour, so I'm going to give it a clean down quick. So I'm going to scotch the entire front end down and get it all nice and matte looking, ready for the new paint. But it's not just the front end we're going to have to do, because when you do repair jobs like this, you've got to blend them as well. But we'll come back to that a little bit later in the video. I want to get the front end at least prepped, ready for paint before we get down to the body shop. So now the bonnet's more or less prepped, but there is some scratches just here on the A-pillar, but I'm not sure if the painter's going to want to paint here or not. It's a possibility he doesn't, so if he doesn't, I'd like to try and save what's here and see if we can get that back to looking tip-top. And to do that, I'm going to try using a little bit of 3000 sandpaper and wet sanding the area to try and remove the scratches, followed by polishing it up and just seeing what we can do with it really. And I'm happy to report that the result just off that is pretty damn good, but I think I can get it a little bit better. So an improvement made there. We've just got to finish scotching off the front end. I'm not going to do the bumper while it's on the car because I just risk damaging the headlights or the trims, so just the wings to do, and then we can look at pushing forward. So now I've got the Golf pulled out of the garage because it's time to take it down to the booth where we're going to be spraying it. And I've actually got a little bit motivated to give it a bit of a tidy up in here because sometimes it does get a bit out of hand. But that's mainly down to the guys at Machine Mark because they've sent me out some bits which made me realise I probably should start looking after this place a little bit better. The first thing of which being this new tool chest complete with every tool I could possibly ever need, and also some extra storage too. And they've also sent me out this new 2-ton, very low entry jack with these plastic wheels as well, which makes it super silent to drag around the garage. But you'll be seeing plenty of those in the future videos, but if you want to grab them for yourself, I'm going to leave the links in the description. Sometimes my luck is next level. I've just pulled up down the body shop and one of these was poking out, and I've just done this to the boot which didn't need painting, but I suppose now it does. I mean, if it's going to happen at any time, the best time for it to happen is right now because, well, we're just about to get started on getting this painted. So not a great start to painting this car, or to driving it for that matter, but I can get that area repaired by putting a tiny bit of filler in just to fill in the chips, and then we can start scotching the doors up, ready for those to be blended when we repair the front end. And we did also find a dent bang in the middle of the door, which we're definitely going to want to fix whilst we're doing this repair. But I'm quite happy to say, with this being a salvage car and that being the only bit of filler on it, that's something to be proud of, I think. But we've got some more stripped down work to do because we don't want to be masking around wing mirrors, so we remove those from the doors. And also the same with the door handles as well. Then I could pull off the window seals. And also the wing mirror on the other side too. But now the rest of the car is more or less ready for paint. We can take off the front bumper, strip that down and get that prepared too. We then decided it'd be a good idea to prime this bumper, so we got it straight in the booth that night and got it primed ready for the next day. And then the following morning we got the car ready by giving it a final panel wipe before pulling it in the booth. Now one thing that was important too is making sure the colour match is right for the paint that we've got to what we're going to be painting the rest of the car in. So we did a spray out card and compared that to the colour of the car to make sure that we're going to be happy with it once the rest of the car is also polished up. But I think personally that looked pretty good, so now we can get the car inside the booth and get it all completely masked off to make sure we don't get paint anywhere that we don't want it. And once all of that was done, again a final panel wipe down to make sure there is no dust or contamination on the surface of the car. And then we could get the lapis blue paint mixed. And then Callum can finally smash out paint in the car. So with the paint poured into the gun and the booth fired up, we can finally see what this car is going to look like in one colour. So there we have it, one Golf R which has been completely repaired. I mean, we've got some reassembly to do, we've got some flattening and polishing done, but it is now got no warning lights and is back in one colour. But we have some more work to do from here because we have the modification side of things to start. But before we start with those modifications, we do need to get that front end back together. So we pull the car back into Tom's unit and get it on the ramp. So the first thing to go in is the headlights. So once those are pushed into place with the 5 bolts in them and plugged in, they're good to go. And now those headlights are on, we can move on to that first modification, because we all know that I'm a bit of a sucker for a body kit, but I didn't want anything too out there and too outrageous for this Golf. So now it's time to fit the bumper, and that brings us neatly on to the kit that Auto Ideas sent out. This is the first out of 4 pieces. A nice carbon fibre splitter just to accent the bottom beautifully. Now with this, we've just tech screwed it in place for now on the bumper, so we make sure it's positioned perfectly, which we're going to replace for nuts and bolts before we put it on the car. Because the splitter is most likely to take a heavy hit and also has a lot of air pushing against it, so we want to make sure it's fastened tight. So now we've got that bolted on with some massive washers to help spread the load, we can fit the bumper back up to the car. And we can really get an idea of how that bumper is going to look now, and it looks sensational. So we can get that fastened up and then move on to the grille. So with the 3 plugs on the back, the 2 for the light bar and 1 for the radar, this just then clips into place with 2 T20s, 1 in each corner. And then now it's time to see how that all looks. Moment of truth. Yeah! How much nicer is it to have a kit that fits properly? You know, so you have to spend weeks chopping a car up to get it on. That's nice. I like that split. That gives it that bit of And now that we're happy with how that front end's looking, we can get the arch liners in. But before we can get that under tray bolted on, we've got a bit of cleanup to do first, because it looks like Mark McCann's been driving it. I'm presuming this is all part of the accident because it was all caked into the subframe and other areas too. But that doesn't really add up to my original theory that this car went into the back of a lorry. But now we've got half of a field cleaned out of the subframe, we can get that under tray back into place and bolt that to the bumper and also the arch liners. And then it was time for the wheels to go on, so we can finally take a look at how this car looks in its complete form. And how sick is that looking? What a great way to start this video. But we still have so much more to do. But to do that, we've got the car back in the garage at home, and as you can see, the splitter and the front end are on and complete and painted, but we're missing a few little bits. Like some of you have picked up in the last video, we're missing the R badge here, but also as well, the Golf R, in my opinion, looks like it's just generally missing bits anyway. It looks really plain, a little bit boring if I'm being honest. I know it's supposed to be a sleeper, but it doesn't look anywhere near as aggressive as I think it should. So to carry on with the rest of the body kit, we get the car jacked up in the air and held up on axle stands too, because the sides and the rear of the car could really use something to spice them up. But luckily, the splitter is not the only thing that the guys at Auto ID have sent out to me. We've got some more carbon fibre. Oh. So to try and improve the look of the sides of the car, we've got new carbon fibre side skirt extensions to go on there as well. So to install these, what I did is put a little bit of double-sided tape on the car to hold the carbon fibre side skirt in place, and also some masking tape as well. And once I was happy with the position of the side skirt on the car, I then used tech screws to cement it in place. And once I've got all 8 of these in place down the sides of the side skirt, it was then holding nice and sturdy, so I can get the masking tape off, get the last 2 in, get it back on the floor and get on with the other side. But instantly, how much better does that look? It's like it was made to have this from the factory. But now that side's done, it's onto the other side and we can do exactly the same again. But some of you may have realised at this point, but I hadn't realised at the time, at this little puddle underneath the car, but we'll have to come back to that a little bit later in the video. So the front and the sides are on and looking good. They're quite nice, a little bit subtle, but one thing that's not so subtle is what's going on the back end of the car, because this, I think, is where it really lets the car down. It's just, like I've said already, I don't want to keep going on about it, but it is bland, isn't it? So we have some bits to really spice this up. But to install those, we need to remove the standard rear diffuser on the car, and this is actually really easy to do on the Golf R, much easier than what I'd actually expected. Now, if memory serves me right, it was a T15 in the bottom of the rear diffuser which goes into a clip, and once that's out, you can pop the rest of the rear clip out just by pulling on it, and then just 3 more of the same fastenings further along the diffuser. And once all 4 of those are out, it's then just a good pull from one side which should release the clips, and then you can slowly pull the diffuser away from the bumper. Well, I can't get over how easy that actually was. That was a doddle. Even if it was a little bit messy just because there's a lot of mud down there. While the diffuser was off, this seemed to make a great opportunity for me to give that area a good clean up before I put the new one on. Now, I didn't actually notice this, but the old one is actually damaged. We've got a hole and a scratch here and quite a deep gouge here as well. So it's quite good that we've got a replacement. And even better when that replacement's an upgrade. So to match in with the side skirts and the splitter, we've got this juicy carbon fibre one. And these vents are much thicker and much bigger, and it should just look much more aggressive, tie in with the rest of the kit, and make this look a whole lot meaner. Right, I've just plonked a bit of tape on there to try and protect the edge of the bumper to make sure I don't scratch it. Well, I thought I was going to have to take the bumper off to get the old diffuser off, but it really is kind of good design from VW that you haven't got to do that. It's almost like they expected you to do bits like this to a car like this, which does make sense really. So, we've got to clip this new one in. So after lining this up and getting it in place, we can give it one final push to secure it into the bumper. And you can see how much more aggressive that is straight away. So now that's clipped in, we can get the tape off and pop in the fastenings so it's secured properly to the car. Now the only difference is for actually fitting the diffuser up is that in the centre, instead of using the factory bolts, you replace them with tech screws. So although with every step the Golf is looking better and better, the back end is still looking a bit bare, and it definitely needs something up top. Now there's a few options in what we can go for here. There's loads of aftermarket stuff, and there's a factory options as well, like the Club Sport spoiler. The problem with the Club Sport one from VW is it's about £1,000 I think, although it is going to be the best fitting replacement. It then also needs painting, because otherwise it looks a bit out of place because there's too much black going on. But there is a much cheaper alternative, and I think it should be just as good in my opinion, and that is the Auto ID Club Sport style spoiler. So what that does essentially is stick over the top of what you've got existing on the car, like that. So you still have the blue section like you'd have colour coded on the Club Sport, but it's a fraction of the cost. Less than 10% of the cost in fact. So in order to fit this, what we're going to do is prepare the surface of the spoiler to be stuck to as best as possible. So they provide you with a bunch of these adhesion primer wipes. So that is going to be my first step. So we'll just go over the areas where the new spoiler sticks to. So one bit on this side, like that. Grab another one, use that in the middle, and grab one more for this side, like that. Now because the last thing we want is this spoiler to fall off, even though it does come provided with some small sticky pads, I'm going to double up and stick it down also with some Tiger Seal as well as those, and that way we know it's not going to go anywhere, because the last thing we want for ourselves and for anyone else on the road is for this to come off when we're driving down the motorway. So I remove the backing off the double-sided tape and then put a couple of dots of Tiger Seal on. So now it's time to fasten on the spoiler. So I put 3 generous blobs on each corner and also a tiny bit in the middle as well of Tiger Seal. And now it's just time to get this in place. I kind of wish I had a second person here for this, because I feel like you've sort of only got one chance, but let's see what happens. Now you do want to leave a little bit of a gap here just so the spoiler doesn't catch inside the boot itself. That's looking good. This side's fine. Probably go a bit tight to this side to be fair. Looking good, looking good, looking good! I like it. Now, bang for buck on this kit, I don't think it could get much better. It turns it from being a completely standard, little bit boring car to giving it that little edge and just looking like a slightly more beefed up version, I think is the way to put it. But it definitely looks good, and sometimes, well, obviously we've seen in the past on the i30N and stuff like that, a lot of these aftermarket kits can be a little bit questionable in the way that they fit, but all of this stuff is like pretty much OEM quality, even down to the spoiler itself. It fits near on perfect, so thanks to Auto ID for sending those bits out to us, but we've still got a little bit more to do. The next of which being a very simple little interior modification coming from the guys at RPM Performance. This little footrest cover, it's a little detail on the interior which ties in perfectly with the shapes in the pedals, so a nice subtle little one. Now, I realise not all of you will love every single modification I ever do to a car, but that's because it's all a very personal thing and it's all down to what that individual person likes. So that's what modifying a car is about. It's about making it your own rather than just having something which came like it from the factory. And that's exactly the reason why I love modifying cars. I like taking something which was alright but making it unique to me. So we're making some progress with the aesthetic of the Golf and it's looking a lot better, but we do have some more bits to do. Now, before we do that, the eagle-eyed viewers of you will notice from earlier in the video on the driver's side when I had it in the air that there is definitely still a coolant leak underneath, which is strange because when I've driven it, it's not leaked coolant until the next day when it's been parked. I've noticed a puddle underneath. So we really need to find the source of that leak. And by the way, how cool are the new quick jacks I've been sent out? These seem like a great mobile alternative to a scissor lift when you haven't got space like I have to put a scissor lift in because of the way you've got to manoeuvre cars. These can come in and out and they can be moved around with no problems at all and get the car, you know, nice and high in the air. But as we can see here is my coolant leak and, well, it's going at a good rate to be fair. So to inspect this further, my first job is getting off the under tray. Now what I'm going to do to help me find the leak is repressurise the system with the car off, obviously, and get this nice and pumped up so we can really kind of pinpoint that problem area. But as you can see now, the leak's really coming out, but it's dripping mainly off this intercooler pipe, so that means it's got to be coming from above there. So I think I've found the source of the problem. Just down there we've got a connector to the radiator and that is spraying out under pressure, so but it definitely does look like it's that. And you'll also notice a very much bodged pipe here. We noticed this one had a split in it, ordered a new one, but I wanted to try and drive it, so we would just kind of put an aluminium piece as a joint to fix that pipe temporarily while we're waiting for the new one, so we're going to replace that at the same time. So all we've got to do is remove the two damaged bits of piping and replace them for brand new genuine ones. So off comes one, and then we can pop in the one that goes to the second cooler on the driver's side, get that in place, and then we've just got to get the hose clamps themselves on so the pipes are fastened. Now these can be really difficult, so it's been really helpful to have this kind of cable clamp tool which you can feed down into those tricky positions and get those clamps positioned correctly. Then onto the next pipe, which getting off I did blind myself by getting coolant in my eye before actually removing it and giving myself a shower. I got it out. That was an absolute nightmare. This connector up here is just impossible to get to. I had to reach in there with like the longest screwdriver I had and just managed to tip that open, but got there in the end, and you can see now why it's leaking. So just here you can see there's some damage which looks like it's been caused by the auxiliary pulley, and I think the reason why that's happened because the mounting points in the AirTech intercooler are a lot bigger than the standard radiator, and it gives it a little bit of play. Now what that allowed it to do is pop out at the top, meaning that it's dropped back by maybe half an inch, maybe an inch, and then it's started rubbing on the auxiliary belt, which has caused it to wear through there, and then start leaking. So what I've had to do is put some little bits of rubber in the mounts for the radiator and a fastening screw in the top, just to keep it all nice and tight and save it from doing that again. Right. So now new pipe has just got here, you can see how it's supposed to look, definitely without a big gouge in it. So we can get that on the car, get some coolant back in it. I've secured the radiator to the intercooler better now, so fingers crossed this one doesn't wear again, and we should now permanently hold coolant. So we can now refill the system with coolant using the vacuum filler again, which is going to make sure that we don't have any airlocks. And now onto the final piece of the auto ID kit, a nice simple one, new mirror caps. The silver really didn't tie in once we had all this other carbon stuff on there, so fitting these gorgeous carbon ones made the world of difference. Well, there's still a dribble of coolant underneath, but that might have been from me spilling it. I'm not 100% sure. But what I do know is that I still haven't really properly driven this car, and that's what we need to go and do right now. So here we go. First proper drive in the Mark 8. I know I have driven it about a mile from my house to where we painted the car and back, but that is it. So you guys are coming with me, and it's going to be warts and all. First impressions are it's definitely a comfy car. Steering's quite fast, which is good, I like that. But literally the only noise I can hear is the R600 intake we've fitted. I can hear well, nothing from the exhaust. Now I don't know if it's because my expectations of what a performance car is a little bit different maybe to what a person that might buy a Mark 8 Golf R would be, but it's not that it's not fast, it just kind of lacks the drama that I'd expect from like a performance car. Does that make sense? I don't know what I was expecting. I don't know, I've never gotten a performance car and felt like it's not a performance car before. That's the only way I can describe it.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never.
This is definitely the first time where one of the builds that we've done on the channel, I don't love it out the bat. Not that the interior is not lovely, it's not that the outside doesn't look nice, it just hasn't got the drama and the sense of occasion that you get with, you know, any other performance car. I don't know if it's just the sound or if it's the way it just kind of almost does it too well, but it definitely needs a bit more excitement in here. Now the Golf R is known for having a little party trick which might spice things up a little bit, so it's the launch control. That's what they're all known for. They're known for being rapid off the line, so maybe I should give that a try before giving my final verdict. Right, I've got to turn off the ESC, is it? Which on this seems to take forever. You wouldn't want to be doing this at a set of lights because you're going to lose your race. ESC off, confirm, there we go. Right, let's give it a go. So we want drive, sport, plant it. Okay. It ain't slow. It lives up to the typical Golf R thing. It's definitely fast off the line. It is a little bit exciting. It's not all bad. Okay, maybe I was being a little bit harsh on the Mark 8R, but it definitely is lacking that little bit of drama and excitement in your kind of normal driving that you get from a lot of other performance cars. But that's not to say that I don't like it, I just think it needs more work to put it to my taste. But now I've got this new carbon splitter on, the carbon wing mirrors, the side skirts, the Club Sport style spoiler, and also that carbon diffuser. I really like the way this car's looking. But there is also some bits on the looks that I still want to improve, and also we have plenty more work to try and make this car what I expected it to be from the start. You might think the standard brakes on the Mark 8 Golf R are pretty big, and until I saw these, so did I. But we'll come back to those a little bit later in the video. The reason why I've got those and loads of other performance upgrades is because in the last video we finished rebuilding the car and drove it for the first time, and I hate to say it, but I was a bit disappointed. So we all know the way to fix anything like that is by throwing money at it, but we do want to try and improve this car, and we have loads of parts in order to do that. But we do want to measure the performance, so we're going to do a braking test from 60 to 0, measure the distance, and then do the same again after we've fitted all of these modifications. And yes, this is done on private land with the landowner's permission. So this is our start line. Let's see what she does. Did you get that? So we went from here all the way to here. So let's check back later in the video and see if we can beat that. So in order to make a start on transforming this car, we need to get it up in the air. So we can stick the car up on the quick jacks and getting off these horrible 18-inch wheels, which you guys will be glad to hear will never be going back on this car. And we're going to start by dismantling everything to do with the suspension and brakes on the front end of the car. So I take out the pinch bolt for the suspension, the carrier bolts for the calipers, and also the brake lines too. Then once all of those are off, I can push the piston back in the caliper and get that away from the disc. Next up is the T30, which holds the brake disc to the hub. And then just a few taps on the face of the disc and the brake disc should come away from the hub. And now that that's off, I can remove this brake disc shield because that's going to get in the way of our big brake kit. Then the next thing to come out is the anti-roll bar drop link. And then I've got to bring the car down so I can access the top mount bolts underneath the bonnet. And these are hiding underneath the windscreen scuttle, so I've got to take off the windscreen wipers. And I actually managed to get away without removing this because once I'd removed the wipers, it gave me enough movement to just be able to prop it up, and then I could get a ratchet in there to get those bolts out. Now with the four-wheel drive VAG cars, normally what you've got to do is take out the bolt for the drive shaft because this is going to stop you getting the full range of movement and be able to get the shock absorber away from the car. And another annoying thing which VAG group cars have is this kind of split style of hub. So I've been out and bought this specific tool for splitting those because otherwise they can be an absolute nightmare to try and get them open enough to be able to get the shock absorber out. And I still didn't quite feel like I had enough movement in it to be able to get that shock absorber out. So I undid the lower ball joints and then that definitely gave a lot more room. So after a good wrestle with it, we finally managed to get it off, and then we can look at what else we've got to do to the car in this video. Right, now we've got some of the messy stuff out of the way, we can have a look at some of the nice new shiny parts. And these come from the guys at Bilstein. And these are the latest and greatest coilovers from the guys at Bilstein, and they are going to be the best thing I can possibly put on the Mark 8. So regular viewers of the channel will know that I've ran Bilstein suspension on a lot of my cars, and I'm still yet to be disappointed by it. So these are the Bilstein Evo T1s. They're the newest to the range coilover, and well, they look sick, don't they? So the first thing that I've got to do to fit these new coilovers is take the top mounts off my old suspension, so I'll compress the springs and take those off. And then we can transfer these over to the Bilstein Evo T1s. So then using an Allen key to hold the shaft in place and using a deep reach socket, I can tighten these up properly. And then we can get both of these back into the car. So again, using that hub splitter tool, I can drop the coilover into the hub and then push it up so I can bolt the top mount in. So new suspension is now on and looking sweet. I can't wait to see how that rides and how much better it makes it feel. But this is one time that I'm glad that my car is a lower spec, because on some of the Golf Rs you get a adaptive suspension, which then means you have to get an expensive module to put in to cancel out an error code that you get on the dash. Mine hasn't got that, so I haven't got to do it. So now the fronts are done, it's time to get on with the rears. So the rears are a much easier job. So all we're going to do is take the two bolts which hold the top mount into the body of the car out, which would have been easier to access if I did take the arch lining out, but I really didn't want to. And then we've got a few different things to remove on this lower arm. So firstly is the rear anti-roll bar drop link, followed by the lower shock absorber bolt, And then to make removing the spring easier, I just undo the bolt which holds the lower arm into the hub.
Jesus Christ.
And once those are out, we can remove the shock absorber and the spring and look and getting the new ones in. And whilst I'm doing all this, Joe's being super helpful in the background and cleaning out all of the wheel arch liners to make them look as good as the new parts that we're putting on.
8 minutes. 8 whole minutes.
So just like the fronts, it's just whizzing off the top mount, transferring that over to the new coilovers, and then that can go back in the car, but we're going to have to adjust the ride heights later to make sure the car's sitting just right. Now, if you were curious what I'd done with the rebound settings, I'd set all of the coilovers at the softest setting possible, because that means it's going to be the most comfortable it can be on the road. But if I ever do take the car to a track, I can then turn it up into a stiffer setting, which means it's instantly going to be adapted for use there too. So now the suspension is all on and bolted up. Even though we've still got to adjust it before we put it back on the floor, there's some upgrades we want to do first.
Okay, that's the coilovers fully installed now. I don't know what the ride height is going to be like, so I might have to play around with that once I get the wheels on and get it back on the floor. But there's a lot more jobs I've got to do before we can do that.
So earlier in the video, I showed you guys this brake disc, and this is what's going to be going on at the front of the Mark 8R. But obviously, the standard calipers and carriers won't work with a disc that size. So there's the old disc, which has just been sat out in the rain. You can see this one is a two-piece disc and also much thicker and much wider as well. Is width the right word?
Yeah. But that's just only a small piece of the kit.
Check out these bad boys. Oh, look at that. Go on. Let's have a look. Jesus Christ. Right, so this is a 6-piston caliper made out of CNC'd alley, so it's going to be lighter than a standard caliper and also perform much better. Also, look at them pads as well. Oh, mate, I'm in love with them. They are just gorgeous. I think I need a minute. I'm taking these to my bedroom.
But the first part of that kit which has got to go on is these braided brake lines. Now these are better than the rubber ones because they don't allow a little bit of expansion when you press the brake pedal and the fluids force through it. So that means you get a better brake pedal feel.
So we can swap out the standard rubber lines and get rid of those and put on these nice new braided brake lines which have been provided to us by the guys at Racing Line, along with those new discs and big brake kit as well. One thing I've liked about all the kit that I've had from the guys at Racing Line is that it is literally a bolt-in replacement. They use all of the factory mounting points, so there's no adaptation needed apart from the part that you're changing out. The next part of this kit is the carrier, which the caliper bolts into. And once that's nice and tight, we can then put on this massive two-piece brake disc. So once the T30 is in place for that, it's time for the caliper.
I've never been more excited to put something on my car in my life. More things coming in.
So this uses 2 large Allen key bolts which go through the caliper and into the carrier.
It just feels sensational. Is this where we find out I've not got the right size Allen key?
You've got the Allen key, but I've got a socket.
It just looks sick. I'm going to savour this.
That's satisfying.
They look stupid.
Stupidly good.
So once those calipers are bolted in, it's time to put the braided brake line in, which just bolts into the back of the caliper using an 11mm banjo bolt. Well, they are absolutely mental, but you guys will be glad to hear, because I know a lot of you hate the standard wheels off the Mark 8, that they don't actually fit over these brakes anymore.
So unfortunately I'm going to have to get some new ones, what a shame.
But these brakes and suspension are by far some of the nicest bits I've ever fitted to a car, and I couldn't let these go inside a dirty wheel arch liner, so we've cleaned and ceramic coated them to hopefully they stay cleaner for longer and should be easier to do as well. So I'm in love. I never want to put wheels back on this car again. Okay, so brakes are now fitted. We're still yet to bleed these up. And for that, we need to go to the interior of the car. But before we bleed the brakes, we've got quite a big transformation to make on this cockpit. And we're going to do this with help from the guys at Wheel Finesse. Now, you've seen these guys on my channel many times before making steering wheels look 10 out of 10, but in this video, we're going to be doing something extra on top of that. So the first one of the interior modifications is a complete Alcantara dash cover. And yeah, transform the dashboard of the Golf into something a little bit more fancy.
Spicy.
In preparation for this, the guys at Wheel Finesse scanned a Mark 8 Golf dashboard in order to be able to make this perfectly measured cover. Now, what I've gone for in terms of specification is a very dark grey with a blue stitch, because I didn't want to go for black because I thought it might look too much, but I didn't want to go for the matching grey as what's on the seats, as I thought that might look a bit washed out and faded. So the way these covers work is they come pre-measured and pre-cut, and they're self-adhesive on the back. So all you've got to do is get it in exactly the right position and then peel off the backing section by section until it's in place. Now, these guys do the dashboard covers for certain makes and models, but they also do steering wheel covers and airbag covers for the steering wheel as well. So if you are wanting any of those, make sure to go and check them out. I'll leave their Instagram in the description. But when you're buying an item off them, make sure to use discount code SLICKS. It's going to save you a whole 15% off your order. You can thank me later. And now that the dash wrap is finally in place, we can start putting in some of the final trims to finish that off. But that is not the only piece of the interior that we're going to be doing. We've also got a steering wheel cover to go on, and as well as that, we've also got an airbag cover. So Tom gets on to stitching that steering wheel cover on, and you can now see I've done a matching spec on this to what I've done on the dashboard. So it's the grey Alcantara, a blue centre stripe and blue stitching. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. I want one of those for my car. Well, you can have one, and also you can specify it to the colours and materials of your choice, and to do so, the link is in the description. But now the steering wheel cover is on, we've got one final piece. So we now have the Alcantara cover on the dash and the steering wheel, and that is looking wicked, but there is one final piece to finish that off. Check out that bad boy, an Alcantara airbag cover for the steering wheel as well. It is nice.
Very nice.
Has this not completely transformed the interior of the Mark 8R? I know I need to give everything a bit of a wipe down and a clean, but that is amazing. The airbags themselves have small incisions all the way around the fabrics to retain the original braking points on the materials, to make sure that they are not going to get in the way of the airbags actually deploying. So they're weakened in those areas to make sure they're still safe. So 1 out of 5 wheels is done, but we've still got 4 more to go. So let's take a look at them.
I got a queen, she lit me to evening. She ripe like a peach and she snapped me to snippet. You well overdue for that link up in person. Text me to fall through a murder, she wrote it. Still up with courage, you're doing a service. Pull up to the crib, I'm equipped with the brush strokes. Cutthroat from the low, where no love goes. Women buddy like it's been that. Wanna fuck me looking at the bill stack. Off the bubbly buddy, I've been stressed out.
Now, you can't have wheels without tyres, and you can't have tyres without wheels. Or you can, but they're going to be useless. So, I've come down to Wheelmania, and they're going to fit some new tyres on the racing line wheels for me before we get them on the car.
Carry the torch, I'm way up, it's litty wherever we float. I came from the cold, used to rest on the floor. I stitch up my wounds, was born a soldier. Flipping the struggle, I'm taking it worldwide. Hold it down when you talk to me. Say it is what it's supposed to be. Say it loud, but I mean it too, yeah. Talk that good when you talk to me.
How sick do they look? I'm loving the gunmetal finish. It should tie in perfectly with the carbon on the car. But if you are wondering what tyre choice I've gone for, again, I've gone for the Continental Sport Contact 7, the same as what I went for on the i30N. And that's because the ratings on these tyres match those of the Pilot Sport 4S's, and they come in at about £100 cheaper a set. So that's a win and a win. Let's go get these back on the car. Now, would it not be a shame to put these manky old little wheel nuts back in with these discs and the new wheels, which we've just gone to Wheelmania and got tyres fitted for? And they'd be even worse with those horrible plastic covers that VW seem to put over the wheel nuts too. So we're going to upgrade the standard wheel bolts for these. This is a stud and nut conversion. Well, this is the stud. Basically what this does is it goes in place of the wheel bolt, sits in the hub like that, so it makes it much easier to put your wheels on and off much quicker.
and also I think they look a lot better too. So I've got these from LJP Motorsport. I'm going to leave his Instagram in the description. He's one of my very close friends, so if you contact him through his Instagram using discount code SLICKS, he's going to give you some money off your stud and nut conversion. Just tell him the make and model of the car and how many stud holes it's got, and he will sort you out. Let's get these on. Now when you're putting these on, you want to make sure they're not going to come out, and the way to do that is a little bit of Loctite on the end of it, and then making sure they're properly torqued to spec. Now once the Loctite's in and the studs are in, you've got to torque them up to 35 Newton meters, if I remember right, which would be easier if we'd bled the brakes by this point, so I could just get someone to sit in the car and put their foot on them, but I've just put a screwdriver in the disc for now, and hopefully that will do it. There we go, 35. Hello, hiya. Do you like the new brakes? Do you like them? Do you like them? And what about the studs? Yes, I like them too. What about the suspension? Yes, it's very good.
So now that the new studs are in, we're almost ready to put those wheels on the car, but first we've got to do the rear brake upgrade. So we're going to take the sliders out of the calipers in order to be able to take the caliper off the car. And the Mark 8R has some really annoying carrier bolts. They're M14 multi-splines and they're really tricky to access. So there's quite a lot of stuff you've got to undo to be able to get to them, but once they're off, the carriers can come off the car. Then in order to get the caliper over the new disc with the new pads in, I've got to wind back the piston and then push that back in. Now there is a proper tool to do this, but I didn't have it. And once that's in, the old disc can come off and we can replace that with this upgrade from VBT. Now you can see here the size difference between the standard one and the upgrade, but the guys at VBT have also drilled these custom for me so they match my front brake upgrade as well. Now obviously the standard brakes won't fit over those new bigger discs without a bit of work, so what we've got from the guys at VBT along with the other bits is also these brake caliper adapters. So what they do is they bolt into the carrier, and then this all bolts into the car, which then gives you the capability to run that wider disc. So I can bolt this adapter to the carrier before bolting it to the car. And apart from the two countersunk hex bolts which come with the kit, everything else it uses is OEM equipment. So once the carrier's back over the disc, we can then put the pads back in and the caliper back on, and we're ready to rock. So the next job is to bleed up the front brakes, because we've put on new brake lines and obviously the new calipers and lost a lot of brake fluid, so we need to replace that but make sure no air is in the system. Because at the moment the brake pedal goes right the way to the floor, which is not what you want. So I'm going to take the role of pumping the brake inside the car, and Thomas here is going to be on the nipples. Caliper's got two. It's got one on the outside and one on the inside. Which one do you start with, Tom?
I think I'm going to start with this one. Yeah, we can push the fluid out, get as much air out there, and just check the back.
Sounds good to me. So we topped up the brake fluid to replace what we'd already lost, and then I hopped inside the car. This interior is just beautiful now, isn't it? So my job is to pump up the brake pedal to get pressure in there, then I've got to hold the pressure while Tom releases the nipple, which should hopefully release some air, and eventually when there's no air left, the brakes are good to go. Pedal is going down, going down, going down, going down, floor. Going down slow.
And up.
And up. Now finally, after all that hard work, we can get these new wheels on and finish off probably the most perfect suspension brake wheel setup on any Mark 8R in my opinion. I did forget to mention that because I want to keep these new brakes and wheels looking perfect like the arch liners, I ceramic coated them way before fitting them. So you can see here how much easier the stud and nut conversion makes it to put a wheel on, because you can just hang it on the studs and then put your nuts in place and tighten them up. Now I'm glad that is done, because this is the state of the rear pads. They definitely needed changing, and so did the fronts as well, to be fair, because, well, yeah, they'll probably be about the same. So after 20,000 miles and your brake pads looking like this, we know the car, especially with the rears looking like that, this car has not had an easy life. But now it's equipped with massive front and rear brakes, ready for the future. For whatever someone's got to throw at it, these brakes will be able to do it. So now I'm just going to get the car back on the floor and check the height of the suspension. I'm 100% sure, to be honest with you, it's going to need adjusting, and I'm hoping just not too much. Oh, front looks sick. Back definitely needs to come down, but front, not bad. Looks good. I suppose now the only thing left to do is go and try out these new upgrades and see how much of a difference they've made. But I nearly forgot, I've got to put the R emblem on the side and also a little finishing touch on the back window. Let's to see how much difference and better, hopefully, this car feels with the new suspension on. But straight away, I can tell you it definitely feels much tighter. I've set all the suspension to the softest setting for road use because you can easily turn it up or down just by using the knobs on the bottom of the shocks. It's a great balance between the comfort side of things and also stiffening things up for performance. Now the brakes, I can tell you there's definitely been some R&D go into those because it still feels like a factory brake pedal. It doesn't feel super bitey when you put massive calipers on, you know, a normal stock car. You can tell these have been designed properly for this car because it still feels normal, you know, completely normal to be honest with you. But when you press on them hard, like this, Jesus Christ, they really stop. So I'm well and truly happy with those upgrades. It feels like definitely a much better car already, but we still need to see how much of an impact that's going to have over our braking distance, which we measured the stock one at the start of this video. Okay, here we go. Hopefully it shows that it's performing better than it was before, otherwise I'm going to look a bit stupid, but I've got high hopes that it will because those old brake pads were knackered, the discs were knackered, and also we've upgraded the size of it, we've upgraded the tyres, we've upgraded the suspension. So pretty much everything that's going to affect the performance of these brakes. Okay, here we go. There's 60 and braking. Oh, it's good. It's good. So here's the start line and here is where we finished off from 60 miles an hour. Excuse my shadow, but here is where we finished before. Are you ready? And there is where we've managed to stop now. That is a mental difference, really. It's almost, I'd say it's about 2/3 of the braking distance, and that's without them even being fully bedded in properly. And if I'm being 100% truthful, I don't think I pressed the pedal as hard as I could have, so there's definitely more in the tank with this. So today we're putting the Mark 8 Golf R through its paces. I've come down to Silverstone to the German Car Festival where we're going to be getting it on the track, but not only that, Racing Line have also promised me a very special experience. My car is on their stand, but they've got another Golf which is a league above what mine is. It's a completely race prepared Mark 7 TCR. And seeing as we've done some upgrades on my Mark 8R to make it a little bit more track friendly with bigger brakes, better suspension and better tyres, it would be nice to see the difference between that and what a fully blown race car is. It's going to be a showdown of the Golfs. We've got the Mark 8R versus the Mark 7 TCR, so that's going to be an interesting comparison. So I've now done my sign on and my briefing and everything like that, and I'm just about ready to rock. Check the tyre pressures there at like 38. They're a little bit lower than what they should be because they're going to heat up a bit on the track, and then they should level out to about where they need to be today, I think. There's only one way to tell. Now, annoyingly, I've got to swap this camera for a GoPro because you can't have a loose camera inside the car, but we'll get a few angles for you, see how good we can make it. So it looks like we've got some interesting cars in the session. Obviously, the Mark 8 got an RS6, got a nice Porsche Carrera of some sort, an M240, M140i. I think there should be some interesting cars to have a little play with. Hopefully, I'm not getting overtook more than I'm overtaking. That's what I'm aiming for. Now this isn't competitive and it's not even a track day, it's just a little bit of track time for fun, but I do want myself and the car to perform well. So all the cars were lined up.
Welcome around the world as we have 5 lights on and it's lights out and away we go.
Right, here we go. We're on the kind of warm-up safety car lap, just going to get a feel for everything, just going to catch up with the pack. I've never driven this track before, Tom, have you?
Yeah, I did it like a driving experience thing.
Alright. Oh, we've got rain, that's always good. Yeah. I think this car's got an advantage in the rain though. I think this is probably one of the better ones out in the rain. It's got fresh road tyres, 4-wheel drive, good brakes, not too fast. So with the least dramatic start to any track experience ever, we were away, but there was a huge problem in this because all of the cars were so bunched up, you couldn't really get any pace, and because of the rules of these sessions, you can only overtake on the left-hand side on a straight, not in braking zones or corners, so you're quite limited. This is riveting. I might just drop back, you know. Yeah. It's too bunched up. Porsche is well in the way. Oh, loads of rubber. So we finally managed to find a bit of clearer space on the track, and that's when we went for it foot down to chase one of these faster looking Golfs. Let's try to stick with that. Yeah. And worryingly, as soon as that happened and I had a complete loss of power, there was a red flag being waved and fingers being pointed at me. Me? And I'm praying at this point that it's not something catastrophic. Well, my car broke quick. That was...
Who knows?
Yeah. So I took my car to Silverstone and it broke, is my new title. How does it happen? Like, I don't give this car, the car don't have an easy time on the road. That has to happen here, doesn't it? So straight away, 2 laps in, broken. Let me get my hat because I look stupid. So we got 2 laps around, got really bunched up on the track, and then as soon as I put my foot down, it's got a bit of open like track, boost pipe straight away. So if you come over here, we've got this one here, come closer. This boost pipe here, where it goes straight to the throttle body, which is probably the best one it could have been, to be fair, I think, because if it was low down, then we would have had to jack it up, under tray off, and then try and sort it that way, but this is the only one that's high up, so hopefully it'll be an easy fix and we might be able to get back out later. Tom laughed at me for having these gloves, but saying thank you now,
What are you doing, gardening?
I don't know why you're doing this and not me. I can't, you're unstoppable, mate. You're an animal. That's what we need. Blue Point as well, the finest. Legend, thank you. It's strange how it's that one though, isn't it? That's the one I would have least expected. Yeah. So Tom got to work and got that boost pipe back onto the throttle body with my moral support, and fingers crossed we can get back out on track. Those are my good gloves. That's sensational. Fixed.
Now then, what happened?
All the racing line stuff that we put on the car, it all fell off.
Yeah. I saw you sitting there, and then I'm like, seeing him indicating, and then I saw you go around and come in.
Yeah, we just popped a boost pipe.
Oh.
But we've mechanicked it, we've fixed it, we're ready to go back out, so hopefully we've got some more sessions so I can go and pinch one.
They were just talking, right? So we're in a dealer conference, right? And they were just talking about you, mentioned it, right? They went, oh, there he is outside the window, he's just out there testing. And then, literally 2 minutes later, I see you pull in. I'm like,
I'm a liability. But funnily enough, it was the one onto the throttle body, so it's the only one I hadn't touched. Right. So it's VW's fault, not mine. Facts. Right, back on stand. Let's go see if we can get another session off the guys at racing line. We're ready to rock. Right, here is the plan of action. We've got to wait a bit longer before we can get the Golf back out on track. But before we do that, I'm going to have a quick walk around the show. M6. That is so much better than mine. Also loads better than mine, but nice wheels. Also better than mine. That's actually quite nice. Big want. Also gangster. Chunky AF. Nice colour. Meaty. But this by far is my favourite car of the show. How sick is that? And it's even got big old nodding dog. Just gangster, isn't it? What is it?
Mercedes-Benz.
It's a funny looking Porsche. It reminds me of a dog pissing. Interesting. Now this is an Audi RS3 LMS. This actually comes with a 2 litre 4-pot rather than the 5 pots like we used to in the RS cars, but I would love to build a road going version of this if it's even possible. If you'd like to see it too, make sure you leave a comment in the comments section. I need that in my life. So here we go, second outing in the Golf after we've fixed the boost pipe. Hopefully this one goes a little bit better. What do you reckon, Tom?
Fingers crossed.
Apart from the drumming, it feels okay, doesn't it? But it's still just as bad, do you think? It feels a bit smoother. So I did notice on this session there was definitely less grip on the track, and imagine due to chunks of rubber off the racing line. So when you're trying to get around people, you find yourself picking up a lot of the rubber on your tyres. Feels okay, man, I think. And this was definitely the better session out of the two. The track was a bit quieter and the cars out there seemed more consistent and just a little bit more generally clued up, probably excluding me. Now one difficulty I was having with the Golf R was with the gearbox, because even in the manual mode at the top of the revs it changes gear for you, but it doesn't change back down and keep you in higher RPMs. And all of that combined with the fact that you can't really hear the exhaust is you sort of lose track of where you are in the RPM range and what gear you're in, so whilst you're concentrating on going around the track, it made it a challenge to be in the right gear. The traction control is really messing with it, but it's probably doing me a favour. But all in all, definitely a much more enjoyable session, and the boost pipe didn't pop off again. The only thing I would do if I was doing it again is jack the car up and just stiffen up that suspension a little bit because it was on its soft road setting. Tyres feel quite grippy though, can tell the temperature. I'm nowhere near like slamming the brakes either, to be fair. Oh, I've got all sorts of warning lights on. Oh dear. Bingo. Out the corner. It is. There we go, sports fans. A MK8 Golf R on track on Silverstone. Now, that is not it for my experience today because I've got the TCR Golf to go in, which should be, well, pretty special, I think. That should be really the big daddy compared to this round track especially. So I'm looking forward to seeing that and how that does, and I'm probably going to be sick. So we're going out the frying pan and into the fire. So this is the TCR Golf GTI. So this has been developed specifically, it's a VW car, actually it's not modified for a specific race series. I don't know which one it is, so don't ask me, but what it has got is left-hand drive, which I completely forgot then. That's why I came around this side. Let's try again. Well, in short, it's basically a fully fledged race car. So we've got a digital dash, we've got all pedal boxes, full roll cage. How cool these door cards, by the way, which go around the roll cage. I like that. 2 bucket seats and, well, not much else. All of the stuff is on the steering wheel rather than having stalks and buttons around there. It's just, well, pretty mega in there. On top of that, it's got a full factory wide body kit, racing brakes and the APs on the front, some racing slicks as well. The engine isn't too mad. It's a fairly factory engine. I think it's got a few varying maps between like 280 and 350 horsepower, but in comparison to mine, well, it makes mine look boring, doesn't it? And let's not forget, obviously, the massive wing. Now, this is a front wheel drive car, so you think, why does it need a wing? Well, it's for lift off oversteer, I think, but on top of that, it looks sick. Let's go! It's quite that quiet, isn't it?
It's really quiet, to be honest. But that's mainly because in the UK we have to have them quieter on the race meetings that this one's sort of doing it. There is a louder exhaust you can get for it for the European stuff, but they never bother with it because it's just no point.
So I presume after it just clutch out, it's just on the So the driver of this car is a guy called Phil House, and let me tell you, this guy is an absolute lunatic. Now, I don't want to talk over this too much because I know some of you are going to love the whole sequential gearbox, straight cut gears thing, but this was a full-on experience. The speed of that sequential gearbox, the savageness of the brake, the grip in the slick tyres is like something I've never experienced before. What a car. What driving as well, sensational.
Thank you very much. For a chubby fat lad from Yorkshire.
Oh, kill me.
This is how the factory exhaust sounds on a MK8 Golf R.
which for a car that does 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds really just isn't on.
But although we've done countless hours of work on this car and loads of upgrades too, I still haven't quite fell in love with it. And it would be such a shame after this complete build if I still hadn't built a car which I liked. And not only that, it'd mean a complete waste of time and also thousands of pounds lost as well. So we really need to see if an exhaust and more power is going to fix that, because let's face it, performance cars should sound more like this.
And I do genuinely believe that it actually detracts from the driving experience because there's so little drama inside the cabin, and I really think it needs that. And that is exactly the reason why we've come to Norwich to RPM Performance, because that exhaust needs sorting out.
So the guys at RPM Performance have already made a start. They borrowed a factory exhaust from the guys at Racing Line and made up the downpipe and mid-pipe section. So this is a 4-inch into a 3.5 inch, but now we have to finish it off by getting that on the car, and then we can design the rest of it.
Here is the plan of action. We've doused everything up top in WD to make it easier to break off. We're going to get the Lambra off while it's hot, let it cool down, get the V-band off for the downpipe, and then go underneath and get it removed from down there.
So the pre-Lambra is in quite a nice position because of the top mount turbo, so we can crack that off and get it unplugged and removed. And then it was 1 bolt to remove the V-band clamp, but should then let the downpipe come out, but there's loads more to do underneath.
So to make life a little bit easier, we've got a standard exhaust already off the car so we can see exactly what we've got to take out. So we've got the GPF here with the pre-sensors and the post-sensors, which we need to remove, which are going to be up here. So they don't look the easiest to get to. We've got a bracket to take out here. We can take this clamp off here, which should give us a bit more room. We can see one of them here. So there's going to be a little bit of faff to try and get that out, I think.
A little bit of faff is an absolute understatement. This was not an easy job to do at all. It surprised me the condition of some of these nuts and bolts underneath the car already, considering this car is such low mileage. But exhaust bolts are never easy, so we doused them in WD-40 just to make them a little bit easier to get off. But even after doing that, some of these still weren't easy at all and were super tight, especially the GPF ones. But slowly we worked our way through them all, and we went with the plan of action of splitting the exhaust into 2 sections, getting the rear section off and taking the back box off as one piece, and then taking the front section and downpipe out as one piece too. So once the exhaust was split in half, we could then take out the back box mounts and also the rubbers and get that rear section off the car. Then we removed some of the bolts for the lower engine mount and also a brace from the centre of the car so we could remove the prop shaft. And although we didn't have to remove the subframe, we did have to undo the bolts out of it so we could drop it down and move it out the way ever so slightly to allow the downpipe to come out. But finally we managed to pull the downpipe through the engine bay and get it out of the car.
Yes, baby. You got any words?
That was easy.
So the factory exhaust is now completely removed, including the downpipe, which I'm just going to say it wasn't fun. Just a quick note, doing this exhaust upgrade will trigger an engine management light because of the Lambda sensors. Now I can actually turn that off temporarily using OBD11, but it has loads more features than that too. OBD11 is a fantastic pocket-sized device you can keep on your keyring or in your car for exactly when you need it, because it can perform dealership level diagnostics along with coding as well. And even better than that, it couldn't be easier to use. All you've got to do is pop it in the OBD2 port in your car, and with one tap you can scan your car for fault codes. Now luckily for once, my car has 0. That is rare, but it has loads of other brilliant features too. Say for example you don't like the lane assist feature on your car, well using OBD11 you can actually turn that off. And here's a feature which is really handy for dog lovers like me and also like Dan, because what you can do with OBD11 is turn off your seatbelt warning, so when your dog is secured in the car, that means that it's not going to trigger the seatbelt ding dong. So to grab yourself an OBD11 device, use the link in the description with discount code SLICKS, which is going to save you some money off it too. So thanks to OBD11 for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to fitting this exhaust. Now we've got the new downpipe and centre section just about ready to go on, and then we're going to have to do some fabrication to finish off what goes at the back. So this is going to be the first one of these exhausts that RPM Performance have done, but am I right in thinking this is going to be something that these people can buy to put on their own car?
Yeah, you'll be able to buy these from our store. They're 4-inch into 3.5 inch. It's like a dump pipe, so you'll get the most gains out of the car when they get mapped.
That's what we like. And also check that out for a little detail. Don't worry though, the one you buy hasn't got to have that.
So with the old exhaust off and the new front section ready to go on, we could feed the new downpipe and mid section up into the car. And as this doesn't have the GPF on it, it was much easier to get into place. So we can do up the V-band and the Lambda sensor up top, and then go back underneath and put the prop shaft back on too. Now the guys at RPM Performance fabricate all of their exhausts in-house in the UK using the highest quality materials. Trust me, if you're seeing this place in its entirety, it is astonishing. So now that the downpipe and the mid-pipe are on, we need to make up the rest of the exhaust, and we're going to be doing that on the car. So that means making up all of the back boxes, the exhaust tips, and all of the wide pieces too. And to get this mocked up, Dan tack welds everything in place so we can find exactly where we want everything before we finalise it by welding everything up. And now that we're happy with where everything's going to go, we can do the final cuts, get all of the last bits of pipe in place and bent, and then finally weld on all the hangers and weld all of those seams up as well. And let me tell you, this was amazing to watch because it's so rare these days to see real craftsmen making things in the UK like these guys are. But by this point, it had been a long day and time was pushing on, but you cannot rush a job like this. So as we pushed even deeper into the night, the back box was more or less complete and we could start looking at fitting it to the car. And does the finished product not look absolutely stunning? This is going to be the best exhaust that money can buy for a Mark 8R. But now it's time to do the final fit and get everything in place ready for that first startup. And definitely not forgetting the beautiful carbon exhaust tips which go perfectly with the diffuser and the other bits which we've got on as well. I think I can comfortably say this is the nicest exhaust I've ever had on one of my cars. So we've got the 4-inch downpipe which goes all the way down here into 3-inch and then comes out the back here through 2 back boxes and into the quad carbon exhaust tips which look sick. Now obviously all of that's going to help with power, but we also want it to help with the noise, so I guess that's the next thing we need to check. I'm ready. Are you ready? I'm ready. Go for it. Okay, cold start, not too bad. That's not bad. Throaty. Quite loud. My neighbours are gonna love me. What do you reckon? Sounds pretty good. In race or eco? Race. Okay, going to eco. Going to eco. That's alright, isn't it? That's not so bad. Good. That's pretty decent. And then go back into race. Whoa! That pops a lot considering it's still in the standard tune, but it might get more crazy later. So the time is now 2:05. I think it's time to call it a night for these guys. For me, not so much because I've got to drive from straight to here for Warrington, which is about 4 or 5 hours away, and I've got to be there for 8:30. So I might be in the no sleep gang tonight. But if you need any kind of exhaust or car accessories, especially kind of like Hyundai's and also some Golf R parts, make sure to check out RPM Performance. What's the discount code we're going to use? Slicks. Let's use discount code SLICKS, and that's going to save you some money off some of those parts, so make sure you go check them out. Links are in the description. Okay, so the time is now 7 AM and I have made it to Awesome GTI. But no one's here. They're slacking. What's that about? Well, I've got an idea of something to do while I wait, because it'd be interesting to see the before and after of the 0 to 60 figure. Now, this will probably be slightly different now to a standard car because it's got the new downpipe and things on, so it probably will perform slightly better, but it's still interesting to see. I can put the standard figure on screen now. I think it's like 4.5 seconds maybe, might be wrong, but let's see what it does with just the downpipe on, then let's see what it does after that with the tune. Okay, there we go, on Draggy, a confirmed time of 4.37 seconds. I don't think that's too bad, but I'm sure it's going to be better after it's tuned. So now the guys at Awesome have finally rolled out of bed and the car is being strapped down on the dyno. I've got freshened up and I think we're ready to see what this car can do. I nearly forgot, there's one key crucial modification that we need to make the most power possible out of this car. Bear with me. Here it is. Right, so I've gone and picked up this absolute beauty.
which I think we can all agree was definitely needed. A Forge carbon fibre engine cover, and we all know carbon fibre equals more fast, and that in itself has got to give at least 50 brake horsepower. So that can go wherever it goes, somewhere around there. Doesn't that just finish off the engine bay? Now, if you guys want to pick up any parts from Forge for your cars, they have done you an absolute deal. Using code ChrisSlicks10, it's going to save you 10% off their whole range of products. Unbelievable. So you join me in possibly the best waiting area I've ever seen at a car garage. And what the plan of action is we're going to run the car a couple of times on the dyno first to get a stock power figure, even though it's not technically going to be stock because we've already got the AirTech intercooler on, the Racing Line R600 intake, and also the RPM full exhaust system, so it should run slightly more. That's what I'm hoping anyway. And then we're going to get that stock power figure, and then we're going to do a bit of tuning. Those guys are going to run us through that, and then hopefully we're going to have a massively increased figure afterwards. Then once that's done, we need to see how much of a difference that makes to that 0 to 60 figure too. But back to square one, my job's pretty simple. All I've got to do is enjoy a complimentary drink and watch the magic happen. And with that new exhaust as well, we're definitely going to hear it.
I think it's pretty normal for these Mark 8s to run over their 316 horsepower standard figure on their stock tune, but with this one, with the AirTech intercooler and the new downpipe, we made 362.
What's going down?
So we're just about to flash the ECU, we're going to attempt to flash the TCU.
Is the TCU the gearbox?
Yeah,
okay.
So it's the transmission control unit.
Yep.
It's basically, on these later ones, there's two different versions, and one of the versions is locked, so
right.
We're hoping it's not that, so we're going to go ahead and flash that first,
okay.
And that'll denote what level of torque file we'll put on the engine, depending on where we are with the gearbox.
Fingers crossed for that then.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
And luckily it was good news.
Yay, TCU!
Oh, hang on.
Oh, yeah, we're getting a bet on. I know. I can tell you're a man that likes a bet.
Oh, I love a bet.
Yeah.
A bet for lunch.
Yeah. So we're all putting
I'm definitely
a tenner a kit each. Run the car, it's doing 362 horsepower with the hardware on.
Right.
What is it going to do?
That's stock with hardware, right?
Stock with hardware. What's it going to do?
Okay. I know these are quite good actually on stage 2. The turbos are pretty strong, aren't they?
Yep.
Okay. 463. Ooh. That is my guess.
That's strong. 456.
Ooh, I'm in the ballpark.
I said 459 earlier, so
I'm going to go 457.
457. These guys, you're not expecting what this car has got to give. There's so much carbon on this car, it's going to have nearly 500.
So this car is being tuned with Racing Line software. This is OEM Plus software. There has been loads of research and development go into this to make sure that it's safe on the car it's being put on. Now this has been developed to preserve the drivability of the car and also the engine as well. So it may make a few brake horsepower less than other brands, but one thing we do know is it's going to last. The last thing we want to be doing is blowing up engines.
Right, so we've got the new software flashed onto the car, so let's see what the first run does with its stage 2 Racing Line tune. Numbers and stuff. That's so loud.
So we all watched the screen in anticipation to see who was going to be losing their lunch money and who was going to be going home with a full belly.
The winner pays for breakfast. That's not
I just heard it was the winner. I just heard it was the man with the most money.
it's definitely.
Sorry, Tom, you didn't get a look in there.
Yeah, it's definitely not me, that's why.
Go on then, what we at? What's the final figures?
So 456 and 442.
Everybody, round of applause. Incredible figures. Love it.
That's going to be a quick car.
Is that quicker than your one?
I honestly think in horsepower stakes that's 2 or 3 higher than ours, mate.
Therefore I am 2 or 3 better.
That's how it works, right?
So now that the car is tuned, there's one more thing which we've got to do before we take it on a road test, because taking off the downpipe means that we had to drop the subframe, which in turn knocked the tracking out, which is not ideal. We want to make sure that's arrow straight before putting down all of that new horsepower.
So before that first drive, we popped it on the tracking ramp at Awesome GTI, and I was really impressed with this. Sometimes I've took cars to be tracked and you get it back and they're not
quite as good as what they could be, or they haven't set the wheel straight. But using a Spirit level wheel straightener device, they managed to make sure the wheel is perfectly level before adjusting the tracking, so you know that it is going to be absolutely spot on. And as quick as a flash, the car was then tracked up and ready to hit the road. So here's the before measurements on the Golf. Now, strangely enough, I had this car tracked somewhere else and they said they got it right. Well, it didn't feel right 100%, to be honest with you, and this shows exactly that. The rear is not looking good. The front, surprisingly, isn't actually too bad considering all things, but after we've had a Vettel here, we are absolutely millimetre perfect, 0.01 of a degree perfect, should I say, on the back, and the only thing out on the front is a tiny bit of camber, which I need adjustable top mounts to sort, and the factory top mounts, so everything else is perfect. Now let's go and see how this car actually drives with all that extra power. Right, let's see what was it, 456 brake horsepower.
Somehow I ended up buying lunch for winning that. I'm not really sure if that's how it's meant to work.
I think I'll probably be out of here by the time you buy lunch, so.
Get it right, then you can do a good job of a decent hello. But obviously we've got a bit of water on the floor now. It's
yeah, that's
drizzling.
But good tyres, 4-wheel drive, I think.
Yeah.
Should do alright. Just set the draggy up quick. So yeah, 4.3 it did this morning.
So that's what we're trying to beat, is it?
That's the aim.
And you've got 118 kilograms sat next to you. That's like having a boot full of paving slabs, isn't it? If you can match your 0 to 60 with me in it, that's not bad. And if you want to try it afterwards, you're very welcome. I'm sure you'll shave a couple of tenths off.
Go! Spinning up a little bit. She's fast. That's definitely just staying at 60 now.
Yep, that is 60 miles an hour.
That was a lot of 60.
Yep, definitely 60.
Press those brakes.
Oh yeah, they work.
The brakes are
You've got
sensational,
the stop to go with the go, which is fantastic.
And do you know what? I did it clever. All my idea.
Of course.
Because I did the brakes and suspension before power.
Which literally nobody does.
Exactly.
And, you know, you can be commended for that, definitely.
I know. I'm the king of safety.
Absolutely. It's not slow with me, is it?
So the original run was 4.3 seconds. In the wet, with more power, it did spin up on the front. I did feel it.
Yeah, a little bit.
And with a very good-looking passenger, it's near a 4.9.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So
right.
Maybe I will retest that, and if I get to do it in time before this video goes out, I'm going to leave a thing on screen now. Hi, Chris from the future here. Just to let you know, I did manage to beat that time, and I managed to do it in 3.7 seconds. So I think that's a 0.6 of a second improvement over the previous original run. So that's a pretty decent gain, I'd say. So, big win.
It is kind of addictive. Makes you giggle, doesn't it? Yeah, for some reason, it just does.
I mean, it's good now that it's actually got like a bit of torque, because before it was just so. Everyone who's got in this car said the same thing. It just felt like a Golf.
Yeah, I could see it. They've mapped really flat.
Yeah,
as standard.
So underwhelming, like getting in it, and it was like there wasn't the excitement factor. But I think it's got that now. Yeah, it's the whole package now. And the best part is it'll make a great car for someone else.
So what's your plans with it?
It's got to go.
It's got to go. Yeah. As these things do.
Unfortunately, I'm not in the business of
keeping cars.
If I could, I would, but I can't.
But you keep everyone, wouldn't you? That's the
Pretty
problem.
much, yeah. Well, what a transformation to the Golf R. Thanks to the guys at Awesome, thanks to the guys at Racing Line, and also at RPM Performance too. It's exactly what the car needed, and now it is really the complete package with the brakes, the suspension, the performance, the exhaust note, the interior. It's got everything you could possibly want out of an all-rounder car. So if you have enjoyed this video and the Golf project, don't forget to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I will catch you next time.